check 1, 2, 3.
Thanks, Joe.
Hi, Joe and Yev. I'm not sure who's running this, just so you know, you're muted if you have started the meeting.
So do we just get to watch? No one gets.
Well, we could say if we want to cut our camera off, but
No, I don't think anyone can say anything at these meetings. All you can do is sit around watching the shit go down.
Will Chapman, you're not muted. We can hear you.
good to know. Thank you.
Same with AG, you're not muted.
Well, that's muting us. I wanted to unmute the video.
Yeah, once, just for everyone that's online, once they begin the meeting, you will hear it. There's nothing that you need to do on our end.
Yeah, I'll just keep muting everybody.
Sure, okay. So to start out with, this is our financial officer, Yev Neloff, and he does the budgets for us, and we've had lots of discussions and debates at the RDCK table about the budget. This is our public consultation, and I'm absolutely amazed how many people are here. We appreciate that. I show that we really care. Either we're very popular or unpopular. Thank you for being here. Our regional directors are here, Director Gary Jackman, Director Kelly Vandenberg, and Director Roger Tierney. And of course, I'm also a director as well as mayor of Creston. So I'll turn this over to Yev, and just a couple of things here first. Yev has a presentation here that, and I'm sure he will have a lot of questions. So I would like him to get through a bunch of it before we ask questions. We will open it up for questions. I will run around with the mic like Phil Donahue, because if we don't, we're probably not fair to people because they need to hear what the questions are. I also caution you, this is a time to ask questions. It's not a time for comments, suggestions. It's a time for you to get the information that you need. Comments and suggestions are not for this meeting. We're trying to give you all the information you need, and you're welcome to ask questions and clarify it. So I would appreciate it if we do it that way, as politely as possible.
We brought a mic just so we can actually do that little vetting for you for questions. With that speaker, so you don't have to run around.
Okay, just one in the back. Are you?
We got a portable mic.
Yeah, so whoever needs the mic, if it's close to the back, maybe perhaps we'll use that one. Otherwise, we'll use this one for expedience sake as well. So I'll turn this over to Yev now, and he'll start his presentation.
All right, good evening, everyone.
Right, shut that one off, or I'll shut that one off.
All right, apologies for that. Welcome everyone to tonight's session. Great to see a large crowd out here. As Arnold has mentioned, tonight's we'll be giving a presentation. It's a fairly lengthy one. I will try to move through it as quickly as I can. I'm not going to read everything on the slides. This presentation will be available tomorrow on the web page for this meeting for anybody that wants to review it. There's a lot of information in there. It's a document that basically covers most of the budget for ABC and Creston. Hopefully answers a lot of questions. So we'll go through that this evening, and we'll also talk. I'll bring up the agenda here in a minute, and we'll talk about the whole budget process and where it came from, or the process, and as well as the RDCK services. So I just give you just a few seconds to start the presentation here and share it online. Okay, hopefully everyone can see. If anybody can't see, I will be showing some smaller tables and things. It's not necessarily you can see everything on it, but we still have some chairs available here and on the far side over there. And just from the interest of transparency, this meeting is a virtual meeting, so it is being recorded. Sorry, it's not being recorded. We're not recording it, but members of the public have been recording these meetings, and they are being posted on YouTube. Just to let you know that this meeting potentially will be on YouTube, and the attendees potentially could be visible. Okay, so I'll start the agenda for tonight. So we'll just quickly do an overview of the regional district services. And a summary of 2023. We'll talk about property assessments, which could be a complicated topic, but we'll try to simplify it. And then we'll do a high-level overview of 2024, go through most of the services that affect the residents of Creston and areas A, B, and C. And then we'll show some pie charts that show for each area and sub-area potentially what your tax bill looks like and what makes up the bulk of your property tax bill. Okay, just a bit of a preamble. So this is a draft budget that now is about 2 or 3 weeks old. So we froze the budget for all the public budget meetings. So this is the 9th one we're having in the regional district. And we basically froze that because otherwise we have 8 different versions flowing around from a few weeks ago. What's basically happening, we've had committee and commission meetings continue. We've had these public sessions happen. And so input from those committee and commissions meetings, public sessions, so that will feed into a final draft budget. It'll still be a draft that should be ready by this Friday. And then that will be presented to the board next Thursday. And at that board meeting, the board will deliberate that budget, potentially make further amendments to it, and then that is the meeting where the budget would be adopted.
Date on that, please.
So the board meeting is Thursday, March 21st. So it's the regular open board meeting, and the budget will be one of the agenda items at that board meeting.
Is that in Nelson?
That's at the Nelson Lakeside office. That meeting is also available virtually. Okay, so we talked a bit about the budget process. It started last October, so yes, there's a bunch of meetings that really and a fairly lengthy process that's led to this budget. So we have open board meetings. We've had 2 budget-specific meetings all day at the board to discuss some of the core services. There's a number of commissions, I think at least a couple dozen, that deal with parks, recreation, utilities, resource recovery, etc. And then local service committees. So one of the examples of that is actually Creston A, B, and C have a Creston Valley Services Committee. And at those meetings, they discuss a lot of the services that we go through tonight instead of having 8 different meetings. So that's a monthly meeting. So if anybody's really interested with what's going on at the regional district in the Creston Valley and surrounding areas, those meetings, a lot of topics and services are discussed at those meetings. And then as well, individual meetings with directors on various services. So the regional district briefly provides about 200 active services currently, and through 105 different locations. So locations include our rec centers, our fire halls, various parks, and we've got water systems, and then so over 23,000 square kilometers, 63,000 residents. And one of the key things about the regional district, those 200 services, each one of them stands alone as it's basically, we account for those services on their own. And we can't move surpluses and deficits from one service to the other. So one of the main differences between a regional district and a municipality, a municipality has one big bucket, you get one tax rate, everything goes in that bucket, and then the municipality will, in simple terms, will put it towards roads or lighting or sidewalks, and they can move funds from one to the other. The regional district, if we have a service that's specific to parks, say in area A, and we've got a surplus at the end of the year, that surplus stays in area A and moves forward into the next year. So that's one of the major differences of the regional district. So those 200 services can basically be put in these 8 buckets shown there: governance admin, resource recovery, recreation parks, fire protection, etc. So I'll show a chart here in a second. We'll do the maps first. So there's a map for people who aren't aware of the regional district. So it basically stretches from Yak in the southeast up to Nakusp and north on the and the northwest, Argenta in the northeast, and down to Castlegar in the southwest. And then the chart or the map on the right breaks up the electoral areas. So tonight we've got areas A, B, and C, which are down in this corner here. So we've got area A and area B and area C with Creston in the middle there. Okay, briefly touch upon the board strategic plan. So the current board was elected in the fall of 2022. So over the last year, they worked on a strategic plan to help guide decision making and set priorities. So these are the 7 main priorities that are part of the strategic plan. And under each one of these priority items is 6 to 8 objectives that better define these priorities. So the strategic plan is available on the regional district website for anybody who wants to look at it into more detail. So the regional district itself is a highly regulated provider of services. So this list here of about, I'm not sure, about 40 different provincial regulations or acts in some way impact the regional district. The 2 main ones, or the biggest ones that impact and legislate the regional district, are the Local Government Act and the Community Charter. All these acts are available online and to some degree impact the regional district. So as an employer, the Employment Standards Act, the Workers' Compensation Act, we're legislated from that as any other employer would be. Environmental Management Act guides our waste management services and incentive it. So this pie chart's for the regional district overall, and where the tax requisitions for 24 are, would be going. So almost 30% of the total tax requisitions for the regional district go to the major rec facilities in Creston, Nelson, and Castlegar. Fire rescue is 20. Resource recovery, other community services, and a few others make up a chunk of the rest. So the other community services are basically the smaller community facilities, smaller standalone arenas, community halls, etc. So there's and this is for the regional district as a whole. And so where do our expenses go with the regional districts? 40% wages and benefits, 19% services. So those are contractors, consultants. Miscellaneous is items like advertising, insurance, 8% grants, 8% to service debt. So that includes principal and interest repayment, and then reserve contributions of 7%. So this gives a breakdown of the where regional district spending goes. So quick overview of 2023, spending on wages, benefits, and services came in under budget. There's a number of reasons for that. One of the reasons is wages is if somebody leaves in the middle of the year and it takes a while for us to recruit, we could have a position sit empty for 3 or 4 months before somebody's hired on and actually starts work. Usually when that sometimes when that happens, depending on the services could be curtailed. So if we don't have enough lifeguards, we might not run some of our pools or some of our programs as much as we planned. And we also we had a pilot utilities construction crew for our water utilities, and we were unable to recruit and retain enough staff to run that. So that was disbanded last year. To offset some of the reduction in benefits and wages, some of our areas user fees were down last year, building permits being a main one, and capital projects also came in under budget, but that was largely offset by reduced borrowing costs and use of reserves. So again, if there's a prior year surplus for any reason, it stays in that reserve and goes into the budget for next year to either reduce taxation or to keep reserves at a sufficient level. Okay, so we'll jump over to assessment changes now. Actually, before I do that, maybe should we ask for questions?
Yes, I noticed one hand up and it went back down. I'm not sure if you had a question.
I want to know how, in area A, B, and C, and Creston, what is the population combined in those 4 areas?
Well, great question. Do any of the directors get it?
Little over 14,000.
Little over 14,000. Yeah.
A, B, C, and Creston. Thank you.
So if people didn't hear that, she was asking what the population is of areas A, B, and C in Creston. It's a little over 14,000. So we are the representatives for that number of people. So, and you are one of the people that are here of the 14,000. Thank you.
Yeah, a good chunk of that 14,000. So, okay, we will now move on to property assessment. So the increases in 2024 compared to 2023, the increase is definitely lower. And a reminder that 2024 assessments are based on July 2023 property values. And does that mean taxation will go up and down to the same amount as your assessment change? No, it doesn't. And one key thing to understand about assessment changes for an area as a whole is it can be divided into market and non-market. So market is basically driven by changes in real estate values driven by actual sales of real estate, and non-market changes when you have new construction, new subdivisions, renovations. Those will actually increase your assessment base as well for a particular area or community.
Yeah, there's another question here.
Sure.
So just a question about assessment. How are you going to talk about the mill rate and whether the mill rate will be lowered or what you do with that?
Yeah, so we'll touch upon that for sure. Okay.
Yeah, we're just gonna run around the mic, keep talking.
Okay. All right, so basically how our property tax is calculated. So for each service through the budget process, a budget is done And then a requisition amount is set to fund the expenses for that service. So over those 200 services, a budget that independently of that, the BC Assessment Authority, which is a provincial body, goes through their process and does the values, the property assessments. So those are the letters you get in the mail in early January. So those are two independent processes where the regional district is not involved and can't influence those property assessment values. And also, contrary to some opinion out there, the regional district doesn't look at those assessment changes and say, oh, look, the assessment changes are up, values are up, let's increase taxes. There is no connection there with what the regional district does in its budget setting program and what happens with the property assessments. And so basically, this is how you come up with that tax rate per thousand. And this is where it's different from a municipality again. That tax rate per thousand, there's about over 150 of them, because each service will have its own tax rate, each service that's based on assessment. So we don't combine it all into one for a number of reasons. So it really depends where you live and sometimes where your address are, what services you participate in. So I'll show a table later, and it'll show how you can have 30 different tax rates for if you participate in 30 different services. So then you take those tax rates per thousand, multiplied by the assessed value of your property, and then you get your property tax for each property. Will get a property tax for each service for each property. So you can combine them all together, and everybody in this room, if you add them all up, could potentially have or an average amount, have a different mill rate for your own property. So it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to say, here's your mill rate, because you could be all over the map on that depending where you live.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about the mill rate again, because I did have a discussion with Gary Jackman a number of years ago, and I understood that if the tax, if your assessments are going out of whack, which they are, which you have no control over, then you can have the opportunity to lower the mill rate so that the taxes at a more reasonable rate. Am I wrong about that?
We
Did
don't.
I understand that wrongly?
I don't know if I want to use the word wrongly, but so the regional district, we don't target a mill rate. So again, we set that budget, and then the mill rates, then we don't even call it mill rate. That tax rate for that service is derived from the budget. So the way that taxation rate could be changed is we go through these committee and commission meetings, or the directors. They could influence the budget and make amendments to that budget, and that could either reduce or increase that tax rate for each service. So it's a little different than a city. A city sometimes will target a mill rate. That concept largely does not exist in the regional district.
Mill rate concept?
Yes, the targeting a mill rate does not. So we can come up with a mill rate and show a mill rate, but that we don't call a mill rate a tax rate. But it's not something that we focus on as far in our budgeting process. We look at each individual service, see what the total tax requisition is for that service, and then make adjustments based on that, rather than targeting a mill rate or a tax rate. Okay, so this slide, I know everybody can't see it, but it basically shows the change in assessments for A, B, C, and Creston. So area A, 6% increase. This is on average. B, 8, C, 5, and the town of Creston 4. And then on the right-hand side, it shows that split between market and non-market. So as you can see, or those can see, area B, it's 8% increase. 3% of that was due to new construction. So a fairly significant amount of that assessment change is related to new construction. So that new construction, it'll pick up 3/8 of the increase increase in, if there's an increase in taxation. So that's where existing homeowners or property owners benefit from new construction. Some of that taxation burden will now shift to those increases in assessment. And so area C had a 1.9% increase in non-market, area A 0.9, and the town of Creston 0.8. Okay, so this bar graph, I won't spend a lot of time on it, but the blue bars basically from the last table, that's the 1 year change in assessment percentages or increase, and then the orange are the 8 year, basically the 8 year average. So you can see B, A, C, and Creston are sort of in the middle. And what's interesting to note, in the 1 year period, we've got a range from -2 to almost 15, which is about a 17% range. And if you look at the orange bars going back 8 years and exclude Slopedown because they were unique, that there was a sawmill that closed down there and that affected things. But anyway, you've only got about a 5% range if you look at 8 years. So generally, and it's very generally, things revert to a mean a little bit. If you look a few years back, Creston might have been more far to the left, and now it's shifted to the right. So it's interesting to see over time how assessment increases will usually start in the municipality and then shift over to the rural areas, surrounding rural areas in latter years. So and again, that's very general, and that can change going forward. So here's the assessment changes just for the 4 areas again, 4, 6, 8, and 5. So we'll just show an example of one property tax bill. This is for a rural area, and it shows that the regional district taxes are a portion of your tax bill. There's school taxes, provincial rural taxes, and hospital taxes, and a few other charges on there. And what we'll show for the regional district taxes, there will be one line, which is the majority of it. And what that's related to is for the area you live in or municipality, but it'll show that your tax bill for the services that everybody in your area participates in. And then if you, depending where you live, certain parts of the area, what we call defined areas, only a portion of an area might participate in a service. So those services will be listed individually. So for instance, in this scenario, this is area F. There's a couple fire halls, and whoever lives at this address, they only pay into one of the fire services. So going from there, I'm not going to go through all of this. This is what this is in our budget documents, both the consolidated budget document and the documents just relating to these areas. And we call this a cover sheet. What it shows is the change in requisition from the prior year to the current year for each service, and in this case, that everybody participates in. So there's almost 20 services that everybody in Area A participates in, and it shows the total dollar taxation change. So you can look at this and see where were the main differences and the effect of that taxation. And further to your question about mill rates and tax rates, you can see for every single one of these services, there is a tax rate. So we can average them out for this area because everybody participates in it, and there's tax rates for Area A for this group of services here. But the regional district as a whole, again, we don't look at this mill rate or tax rate and say, oh, we need to bring it up and down. Let's go do what we can here. It's more we look at the budgets, or directors look at the budget of each service individually and make adjustments from there. And this next group is this.
Yeah, there's a question.
Oh, sure. Yes, please go ahead.
Please define the word participate.
Yeah, so participating. Yeah, okay, thank you for that question. So participating is basically you're paying into that service. So does that mean, that you're directly involved or directly use that service, not necessarily, but it means that you're paying into that service and potentially benefiting or have the ability to benefit from it. So when I say Area A, everybody in Area A pays for these services basically means or participates into it. It means they pay into it.
Compulsory.
Basically, yeah, it's compulsory that you pay into all of these services if you live in Area A in this instance. Yes.
Sorry to ask another question, but please explain that a little more because I think that, let's just take Regional Park Area A at the bottom and it says rate is 0.180 and then you have $219,000, right?
Yes.
So what does that mean? That's how much you want?
So that's what the taxation requisition is, yes, for Area A is $219,000 into that service, that's 205.
So how does the 122,000 come in? Because
So that's the total assessment value for Area A.
what does that mean?
That's you add up all the property valuations and you actually multiply that by 10. So that's shows up because these are what's called converted values. So there's over $1.2 billion of property in Area A.
2 billion or 100?
It's but this is what we call a converted value. So there's, yeah, so it's divided for just so that it's what we call, this is a residential converted value. So each different type of property gets a different tax factor. So I wasn't going to touch upon this, but I will for a second then. So we convert this so most of the people who come to these meetings are concerned about their residential properties. So this way we can come up with that rate per thousand, and it applies to applies to most properties. So that's why it shows there. Yes.
Just a question now. So what you're saying is from 2023 to 2024, the change in property values is 1.2 billion minus 1.15 billion. Is that
Correct. Yeah. Roughly, yes. And we have a question way back there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what specifically goes into deriving the value in each section?
It's basically the tax requisition divided by the assessed value. That's how the rate per thousand is calculated.
That assessed value is based on the converted number?
Yes, it's based on the converted number in this case, yes.
What derives the conversion
The province does. So the province has a table. So whether you're residential, industrial, farm, I think there's 6 or 7 different categories, commercial, and so that we have no influence with that. So that's the other difference between municipality and regional district. The municipality can set its own conversion rates.
We're subject to the conversion rates that BC.
Correct. Yeah, the regional district. Sorry, the province sets our conversion rates. Whereas the municipality could say we're going to shift the burden to industrial, or we're going to shift it to residential. The regional districts are set by the province. Oh, question over here.
When you use the microphone, it's very hard to hear what.
Okay.
Yeah, there's one back there. There's also one at the podium there now. So when you have a question, welcome you to step up to the podium.
So it's a couple questions. What should say for the library versus the requisition?
Oh, sorry. Can you stand up, please, or can we stand up when we ask questions?
Yeah, I'm duty fair to see. I'm wondering how much is on there that we give the requisition for the library?
So for area A, it's $154,696.
When building that budget, will you take into consideration the $200,000 reserve?
We can have the directors address that.
The reserve you're talking about is the Library Society has a reserve, they operate Creston Library. There's also 3 reading centers funded under that. And that's not much.
That reserve is what the Library Society independent of regional district holds. So that's not our money.
No, I know.
So we can have a conversation with them and ask questions how they plan to use that reserve. But we don't tell them how to use that reserve. What we do tell them is what we think is a reasonable contribution based on property tax contribution.
Well, we can raise the budget if they want. They already have $200,000 that they can use for, let's say, staying carpet. Should they not be using that instead of asking the price?
There's a lease agreement with the Library Society. And in fact, they have to look after some of the improvements such as carpet with their own budget. So it's fairly complex. But we talked about this last Creston Valley Services Committee a week ago, 6 days ago. And you can come to the next one, first Thursday of the month at 9 o'clock and ask that question. We'd have a lot more time to go into detail. And all of the 4 of us participate, talk everything through, talk to the public in small groups, large groups, it's your choice. We get into a lot more detail than we could get into tonight. But it's a good question, but there's a lease agreement, different responsibilities for inside, outside of the building envelope. And so how the money is used is partially dictated by that.
And this is meant to be rude or anything, it's just that one of the directors in another area said, it doesn't matter if we say at this meeting, it's already decided back to this budget. Does anything that you say here tonight, will that be taken into consideration for reviewing and approving the budget?
I think we're all leaders.
But will be difference. As for instance, we've got the budget for the climate action plan with $950,000. Less staff time into that, less 2/3 of the action, that's still not been included. So we have no direct cost estimate yet, exactly how much time will cost. How much of the climate action plan is budgeted?
Jump to that.
Which one could we try?
Some of the measures in the climate action plan are directly related to individual services, like you see waste management, it's called resource recovery. So that's garbage residual goes in the landfill, recycling organics. So we're gonna spend some money we have on recycling and on organics conversion because we can't afford to keep filling the landfill the way we used to. So some of the things that you may see as actions in a plan have been underway for years. And so the waste related items are paid under service S186, resource recovery piece. Some of the other items, I do not expect to give this signal to our board to fund unless the government is giving a grant, which is usually conditional. So if we accept grant funding to do something, and that also qualifies us for other benefits, I would say we'll support that. If we're told to do something that's not our core responsibility, with your taxpayer money 100%, personally, I'd be inclined to say, why would we do that? Let the province do it. So it's highly variable. The 99 items are highly variable, and I don't think tonight's discussion can cover that possibly. But we can give you a general indication as to how the budget does work.
Just if we can stop accepting grant money, because grant money is not free money. It still comes back to the taxpayers who pay for it, for paying. We got to stop on the grant.
I would 100% understand and agree. It's one wallet. Your wallet, my wallet. 100% agree. However, we also act under legislation which says we shall not do certain things. I bring up waste management because that's federal law, rolls to provincial law, and we're told that we have to respond. We have no choice. So, it's coming out of all of our wallets, but there's a lot of regulation that influence the decisions we make and when we make those decisions.
I'm sorry, really sorry, I just have so many questions. Just one more, with waste management. Are we going to be having collection here in A, B, and C?
Sure.
As it costs, right now it costs $50 per year per household. It's gonna cost, second, what? Yeah, the recycle PC charges are $50 per household, which equals $1,400,000. And the RDCK is proposing to charge $280 per household for garbage removal, which would equal $7,841,000 change. So, you know, for the public, we can see which one we want to go with.
So. Push the button. I'm trying not to get feedback here. We put out some questions to the public about waste collection, because right now we have choices in town. We have curbside, and you have curbside blue box for recycle. And outside town, you have the option to pay, right now you can pay tippet all the way up to Twin Bays, right north of that, that's curbside collection, that's private enterprise, you can pay that if you want. We put out information to the community saying, okay, province keeps shifting the rules, but we may be able to combine curbside garbage with blue blocks if we meet certain criteria set by the monopoly consortium that runs Recycle BC, along with what the province is required as sort of minimums. So we asked people, do you think we want to give this a try? Do you think it'll be to our advantage? The general response across areas A, B, and C is not right now. So when you use words we're planning to, I'm not aware we're planning to. I chair East Resource Recovery and I've chaired Joint Resource for several years. I'm rotating that responsibility now. So in this area, I'm not aware that we're planning to change something from $50 to $200. However, outside of Nelson, they are planning to do that because people are being asked, do you want it? And if they said yes, they may come into the, and similarly in the area chain, Udashania, Robson, they're being asked very specifically to vote on this. So again, there's a lot of detail here. We can't cover the general sweeping question that we're planning or commenters statement, we're planning to do this. But I'm always willing to sit down with a cup of coffee and give you more detail than you may want to hear on the topic. But we don't budget right now, here and now, based on that kind of speculation. These are decisions we'll make incrementally based on what we think future costs would be for managing waste, big picture. Let's say we want a new landfill. Everybody who wants a landfill next to their farm, put your hand up. Okay, so we have a location, I'll talk to you later, and we'll plan it. Those are big decisions. And when I volunteered as a community member, just like you guys, 26, 27 years ago, to sit on our plant monitoring advisory committee and say, what's going on? We were told at the rate we were disposing of garbage to that old landfill, we'd run out of room in very few years. So of course, people like me said, well, we have to compact the litter, we have to sort it, we have to eliminate stuff, we have to be smart. That's what we're trying to be. So again, general comment saying we're planning to couch that with, you heard somebody say that this may happen. That doesn't mean that's what's happening. And please give us a little bit of credit for being careful with your money.
Julie, I would recommend that we move on because we're stuck on one topic here, and I think there's a lot of things to cover. And again, you're welcome to come to Creston Valley Services with your questions.
We have automatic discharge for cycle and pick up, and now only do garbage pick up every 2 weeks.
That's not a regional district service.
Okay, we'll move on to the next,
Chair,
we have
Chair, we just had, the gentleman had a question a few minutes ago.
oh, sorry, I missed that.
Okay, I think my voice is loud enough. My question was why Area B, mainly Erickson, has so much higher level of, you called it infrastructure costs and whatnot. Could you explain what that cost is? It sent ours up to 8.3, whereas the town of Creston is 0.8.
New construction. That's new construction, so that's not regional district construction, so that's people building homes on their properties. That's adding to the assessment base in your area. So somebody builds a new home or builds a new barn or develops their property, the assessment base goes up, and those people who build, those property owners who improve the value of their property are now going to take a chunk of a larger chunk of the taxation than they did previously.
So Area B's total input per household should then go down if the assessment base has gone up.
Yes, yeah, overall, yeah.
Sir, so you're saying that if we improve our property or add or renovate our, if we improve our property by renovating or putting a fence or putting a garage or something, we're being penalized by paying. Basically, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm not sure, penalized is the right word, you are taking on a greater.
Well, you build a shop and my taxes are going up by 49%.
Wow.
And I spoke to an assessor and she said, well, it's because the properties around your area, but she never really sent me the proper houses that are very similar value.
Right, so it could be a combination of again, even an individual property, the value going up because of the market, and then if you do new construction, then your assessment, the value of your property goes up by that new construction. And that's to put you on a level playing field with everybody else in your areas. You're not being penalized, you're being treated equally as everybody else in your area.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
I recommend you move on for at least a little bit.
Okay, so we'll, chair's asked me to move on. Okay, so I think we touched upon this graph, and so we'll skip over. And we got here, and so these are excuse me. So this table here are the services that only defined areas or certain addresses pay into in electoral area A. So you can see by this assessment value here, all the assessment values are different because it's a different group of properties that pay into that. For somebody living on the north end in Rhinedale will pay into say S189. But they're not going to pay into the Creston Airport, for instance. So this is where, depending where you live, it's sort of these taxes now, or sorry, these services will impact your tax bill. As compared to the previous slide, where every property in Area A paid into. So this is the table for Area B. I won't go through it. It's similar to A. So again, this presentation will be available tomorrow for somebody to go through. If they wish, the defined services for Area B, so a much smaller list than Area A, and that's partially because Area A is so long that the northern communities have some services directly tied to them versus the south versus Area B is a more sort of is not as big, so it's got less services, defined area services. So this is Area C. So similar number of shared services that everybody participates in, and with C, a much smaller list of defined area services. One service you'll often see in defined areas is fire protection. Not everybody in each rural area is lives in an address that's has fire protection. So that's often one of the services. And now we have the town of Creston. So this is people addresses inside the municipality. And so these are all the regional district services that residents or property owners of the town of Creston participates in. And many or most of these are also shared with A, B, and C. So one concept I will bring up now is the concept of assessment shift. And what that means, as we saw a few tables ago, is you'll see some areas go up by 6%, others 3%, municipality another number. So if the assessment, average assessment went up in your area more than a neighboring area, you're going to pick up a greater share of the taxation for those shared services. So the assessment values, that's how they do affect taxation. You're going to shift that taxation in general for that area away from another area. And that also applies to individual properties. So if your individual property, for maybe you're on a Riverview or a certain size of home, your assessment went up more than somebody a few blocks down the street, you're going to pick up a greater share of taxes than your neighbor did. So there's lots of moving parts and pieces about why and how your tax bill shifts. Question?
What relevance is it that you have a Riverview or a Lakeview or size of house, the value of house, that type of thing?
Yeah. So that's the question for BC assessment. So BC assessment is very complicated formulas, and we're not involved with that, and I don't completely understand it. So they take all of the sales, they take a whole bunch of data and information, and they use that to derive their property assessments. So we have the regional district has no influence and is not involved with that. So that question is best put forward to BC assessment.
Are they gonna have a meeting here so we can ask them?
Not that I'm aware of.
I suggest that should happen.
Are you representing us? Do you not ask?
Oh, Gary, go ahead.
BC assessment does give presentations, so if you also have a question for there, BC assessment gave a presentation myself and a few of my peers, 100 of my peers. In Richmond, we went down in February, we had a conversation with them about how they track, what they track, with their accuracy and how they can be better. I'm a little bit shocked with what BC assessment was just proposed recently, and maybe all of you got the same thing. I have one for my dad's estate, which I have to manage, and my property, and I got one ceiling for my daughter. They're trying to improve their accuracy in rural areas, because if you have a house that's categorized as large house, U lot, this, that, whatever their metrics are, the tick boxes are, and one sells in an area with 50 of those, that will adjust the price of all 50. If none sell, then they have to throw a dart. They say, yeah, 5%, 2%, they throw a dart. But when one real property sells, they adjust everything in that category based on that. And we are so scattered. You all know what your neighborhoods look like. We're so different that there's no representative house. Nobody in every area has a house that looks like mine. 2 towers on them. There's one with 1 tower, but nobody has 2 towers. So it's really tough for BC assessment to make accurate predictions. One thing they did, and they didn't telegraph this well enough to me in our conversation in February, is they did a mail out, and now they want you to self-assess. What have you changed? Did you add a garage? Did you do this? Did you do your kitchen floor? Did you change anything by April 4th? So BC assessment, mandated by the Premier and Cabinet, through they're required to have a certain level of accuracy. Every year they report, you can read their annual reports, you can understand whether they overshoot or undershoot on average across the province. Is every year they make an assessment for last July, they can check it and check it again and check it again year over year. So you can do the research on that. I have every time I bought a house, every neighborhood I bought a house. They do communicate to us in very general terms, and we don't run them, but the Premier and Cabinet run them. They set that act, they set the metrics, so I'm gonna ask questions there.
Which is appealable.
And it's appealable, of course.
Is it because our properties are their assets? I mean, you said that we were the property owner. That investment period did you pay?
That's a philosophical question, so we'll move on from that one.
They're mandated to produce a certain level of accuracy across the province. And how they go about that is their own decision.
Okay, we have a question over here.
I do, I'm wondering why Erickson has 11.4% increase. And Creston has what, 8%? Who's paying who?
Yeah, no, good question. As we saw in the last few tables, it really depends on what services are in that area.
There is no service.
So right, so it depends on services, depends on your assessment change. So if we go back, I believe, Erickson went up, the values of the properties went up more than Creston. So there's a shift of taxation from the city to the rural areas because of that.
So who's paying who? Who's paying for who?
Okay,
We're 11.4%. Are we paying for Creston? Plus your toilet? Yeah.
no, Creston's,
I can answer that. We have an agreement of what services are provided. And if you look at the list of services provided for Erickson, you pay a portion of those. Those services are shared among the regional district and among the community. The biggest example is our rec center. You live in Erickson, you live in the area that you are likely to use it because you're in the proximity. You pay part of it. So does the town of Creston. If you go up Kootenai Lake, there's a cutoff where they don't pay for the rec center. It's assumed they live too far away and they have other recreation facilities. So we have shared services that we all pay into, and whether it's actually in Erickson or in the town of Creston, we are all apportioned a payment of it based on the assumed use of it. And if you personally do not use the rec center, that's your choice, but you live in an area that has to pay for it. And that is the case with all of these shared services. They're there for a reason and for your benefit. And that's why you're not paying extra for the town of Creston. You're paying a portion of it for where you live. And that has been apportioned out through our financial people, through studies, through a lot of different ways to determine who pays the amount that they pay. So that's a long established thing. And I think this room has a lot of questions, and I appreciate it because most of our budget meetings have been relatively small where people haven't had the chance to ask these questions. So we will do our best to answer them. You may not like the answer, but it is an answer. This is not a time for debate. We want to provide you with the answers. There are other places to effect change if that's what you desire to do. But this is to provide you with the information on what you pay and why and how it's derived at.
okay, somebody's been waiting here for a while.
I'm just really confused here because I'm just really confused because over and over again, I've heard that the property assessments don't influence the property taxes. And over again, you've been saying that the assessment of the house and the assessment of the property is what influence the tax rate or the mill rate, whatever you want to call it. So in reality, the property assessment absolutely affects our property taxes.
Every time a house flipper buys a house and sells it, we get screwed.
Or if we make improvements. So I'm just trying to understand if the property assessments don't influence our property taxes, then how come?
Yes, the property assessments don't influence the budget and the total taxation required to run that service. So that's where the
And how
difference is.
rates?
So then the tax rate per thousand then is set using the assessed value.
It does affect it because it's an
Yes,
assessment.
well, by definition it does, because the tax rate is the tax divided by your assessed value. So yes, the tax rate by definition per thousand includes the assessed value, so of course it influences. But the tax side of it, the total dollars required to fund that service is not influenced by the tax rate. So I hope I'm being clear on that. Okay,
Hello, does this work? One more question. And thank you for bringing up the rec center. Because, so on my taxes, on my property tax, as you showed on your pie chart, 29% of our property tax goes to the rec center.
That's for the regional district as a whole. My guess it's probably even larger depending where you live.
Yeah,
Yeah.
$900. That's what I paid last year for the rec center. So my concern is, and I don't have a big fancy house. My concern is this, the rec center that perhaps 14,000 people are paying for in property taxes. No, maybe that might not be, that has to go by household. Okay, fair enough. Is not accessible to the public. Closed on Mondays, open 3 hours on Sundays. I just saw the posted spring break when kids are off, open for 4 hours, I think, one day. Open on Monday for spring break, that's a cost, I have to give you credit for that. So I'm very concerned that we're putting out a lot of money to support this rec center, but we are not given the exposure to it for the people who want to use it. As well, these are some of the other things that have come up. Too many people in the pool, nobody else allowed in, also, last Sunday came in, a lineup out the door, it was pouring rain, I don't know why people are lining up outside the door, but they are. They could line up in the hall, because it's under a shelter. One person at the till, 20 or 30 people lined up to get in, open for 3 hours only, and no staff to process people and get them into the rec center. I'm just concerned that there is not enough use privileges for the people who pay for the rec center, including myself.
Like to book in what Sylvia said. I've had some discussions with my area director, Gary. Admittedly, I've been pretty hard on him, only because he's my elected official. I'm assuming you all believe in transparency now? For the public? This is what your MO, so to speak?
I haven't read its entirety.
Oh, I'm sorry?
I have not read its entirety, but, so can you, what is your question?
My question is this, I've talked to Stuart Warren on several occasions. He's told me that he's not responsible for the actions of the staff. But by the same token, when I look at your budget, I see that staff wages have gone up. So unless these staff members are free agents, who's responsible for them if my taxes are paying their wages? And these wages go up every year. I've looked at the budget, the wage increase has been substantial, to put it mildly. How does this work? Where's this responsibility?
Okay, we can touch upon wages, and we didn't answer the question you're asking here. Somebody want to address the
My question in essence is, who is responsible for the staff when we're paying their wages and I'm told I'm not responsible for them? No one seems to be responsible for them. I've asked Gary about it. Gary says, well, they're not my staff. Well, they're not my staff, so whose staff are they? And we're paying their wages. I would like an answer to that question. I've yet to get an answer to that question. I've asked it several times. I've had word salad thrown at me, very good ones, excellent ones actually. But I've yet to get an answer to that question. And I believe I deserve one. Everyone in this room deserves that, an answer to that. That'll be huge. Furthermore, I'm going to bring up another point. March 5th, we had you on record saying that you want to stop the public recording of budget meetings. I had that on video. So if you're such a large fan of transparency, I'd like you to explain to the public here why you would say something like that. In my mind, if a politician or an elected official or a higher staff member such as yourself, a CFO, does not want to be transparent, totally transparent with the public, then they are concealing something, they are hiding something, they are holding something back. I'm 63 years old. I've run 2 of my own businesses. I've never seen an explanation for that anywhere unless they're protecting a family member, recovering from, for a colleague or something similar. But I'm not seeing any evidence of that here. So I'd like to know why you would be so against the public recording in person of meetings and the like. And I have you on record saying that on video.
It's more a question for me and the board than for any individual staff member. I'm the one who pushed to have electronic access to our meetings. I pushed for it probably a decade ago because we had a mold problem in the Riandel Community Center. And some people didn't want to go in the building, but the commissioners wanted to hold the meetings in the building. So I said, we have to allow people access. So you're welcome. Maybe it was a decade ago, but it's years ago. I said, no reason not to allow people to see what's going on without having to drive down the east shore or wherever in a snowy, awful, whatever evening. So we've opened our meetings for people to look at them. Recording the meetings has been kicked back and forth and back and forth. Not Yev's decision, not Stewart's decision, by CEO Horn. Our decision. We have a recommendation coming from our human resources group on whether we should record and archive long-term our board meetings. I think it's a good idea, because I'll use 50 words. I said this a couple of days ago. When you wanted to hear 5, that's too bad. You ask me a question, you can get my 50 words. But you could take 45 of those 50 words from your recording and cut out the 5 pointed words, make it sound different. So if we're going to record meetings, it won't necessarily be for convenience. It may, in fact, in the long term, be for true accountability. What was the full conversation? Don't take stuff out of context. So if we're going to do that, are we going to keep them for a year, 7 years, 15 years? I'm more than 15 years elected now, 5th term. I can recall a lot of conversations, not everything. I'm never going to be accurate. None of us are. So, yeah, okay, now we're going to charge more money. And that is Jeff, because he runs out of feed. And we'll need more storage, more space. We need somehow to capture it and being able to use the term fact check. It's a bit of a loaded word. But if we're going to say everybody records everything, and then they start using pieces of a conversation to make a point, then we should, I guess, have the archive, full version available for everyone else to go and see what you actually maybe should have heard as the whole story. What was it, Paul, the other Paul, he said, that's the rest of the story from the news from the 70s. So we are going to debate that as a board. It's not a staff decision. My concern is, do we keep multi-year records? Do we keep every commission and every committee? My other concern is, do all of our volunteers, and I can't operate as a rural director without volunteers. I'm looking at a couple of them right here. Over the years, I've done a tremendous amount of work to help us stay in touch with people. Do our volunteers want to be recorded? So where does it end? So not his decision. Everyone can have a personal opinion. I should know I got mine. The board has not debated it yet. It's coming up on our agenda in 8 days.
May I ask, you mentioned that it's being recorded. Are you guys recording it on YouTube?
No, not this meeting. So
Who's recording all of the RDCK
So-
meetings right
and anonymous groups or people are recording and posting on YouTube. And to clarify, I never talked about stopping them. I just gave you the same transparency speech. Beginning of every speech, just let everybody know that we have no control over that. So
now? Where do we find these YouTube videos?
Google search RDCK meetings YouTube. So they're not our
So
meetings.
you're recording, where do you guys keep your recordings? And keep recording it right now, where's that going?
That's where we're currently not recording. The regional district is not recording this meeting. This is just a live stream of the meeting.
The live stream, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we go on YouTube and research that. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move on.
That we pay 29% of our taxes to the rec center and there's no use.
Yeah.
And the use is limited. hear the comment that simple needs to get it changed right away.
Let's start with the aquatics. I remember a conversation where none of these gentlemen were part of the cluster at RDCK Creston, that was. And people said, we want to swim on weekends, we want to swim in evenings, swim early in the morning because we need healthy people in our community, because we don't have all the doctors who might like, we don't have enough hospital facilities, don't have everybody if we wanted to. So we said, yeah, it's a good idea. So we started ramping up and extending some of our hours. We tried to hire people, and that's where the tax and the salaries go up. It doesn't mean we give 18.2% more to the people who work for us. We might have hired 10% more people for a single service to increase access and hours of operations, plus giving them a raise, plus whatever else, and you get a bigger number than what the actual raise was. This the budget is everything for everybody. We put that in the budget whether we hire them or not. Because if we don't have it in the budget, we can't take money from waste management to hire lifeguards. Not allowed, provincial rules, flat, can't do it. So we budgeted to try and increase access. We're continually looking at base allocation, access to the pool, allowing the public to book the pool for private parties, allowing senior swims, allowing the kids swim, school, getting school kids in here so they know how to swim when they come up the lake. They get into that frigid water and get over their literally over their head. They don't understand what it means to swim in a lake versus a pool. We balance that with ability to get that staff, and we can't get aquatic staff. We want it for young and elder people. If you think you want a part-time job, come be a lifeguard. We'll help support you through training. So we can offer the hours of service people are asking for. When we give you those hours of service, the staff will go up, the cost of staff will go up. Not because we gave anybody a raise, but because we have more people to allow more access. How we balance the use of this facility also comes down to 2 or 3 things. This big box, call it big box, costs so much every year just sitting here. So we pay for the long-term debt for the massive upgrade that happened to make us the nicest rec facility in Central Creek, without a doubt. We pay for that largely through taxation. Yeah, we could show you all the details, how much it cost, we're still paying off those loans. Some of them are maturing, disappearing because we forward incrementally as we rebuild this complex. Some of them are gonna roll over to a higher interest rate. We'll balance that. We actually kind of know what we're doing. Well, maybe not me, but Craig knows what he's doing on that. That is sitting over there. So we also say users should pay something. You shouldn't just walk through the door and demand 80 hours on the page lineups. So we've targeted how much we're gonna pay for this based on the percentage of operational costs, 30 to 35% of it covered by user fees. And then we say, okay, let's offer more hours to see if we get more users. If we don't, then the cost per use per hour goes up and it goes on your tax. So we're continually balancing demand with a fairly careful analysis on how this is used, the whole facility, the pool, the exercise areas, all the meeting rooms, the ice, curling, and the arena. We actually track all of this. Those guys. And they give us feedback, and then you give us input. Come to the Creston Valley Services. Tell us in detail what's happened in the past. What do you want? What are you willing to pay for? What are the other benefits you get for that in terms of a healthy community? And less pressure on other physicians, less pressure on the emergency room. We understand all that as part of our balancing act. You hired us to do that job. Have a little bit of trust. Some of us have an idea what we're doing. But always, always tell us if you think we're going sideways, because I'm here to listen. I'm going to say in 40 minutes, I leave, because it's my 66th birthday today. I'm having a coffee right now. And at 8 o'clock, when the little guy takes his holy gear off, they want to take grandpa outside. So it's no insult to you when you see me get up and walk out. You know my email, and if you don't, somebody next to you does. And I will always talk to you about budget year round. Don't do this once a year. Talk to us all year, please.
Yeah, before you move on, I want to just point out one extra benefit to this beautiful rec center. We have been able to recruit physicians to our valley like we never did before, because they are attracted to living here because we have this rec center. So it has other benefits besides our health and the usage of our people. So remember that when you're questioning whether we should have a rec center or not. It's done a lot for our community, and it continues to do that. So I see a question in the back, I will allow it, but then we have to move on. We have an unprecedented crowd here. A lot of questions.
The question was, how many people here have a doctor? Or don't have a doctor? So who has a doctor? Who doesn't have a doctor?
But the other thing is, we keep our emergency service, our emergency department is open because it's staffed. And we also have a shortage of registered nurses, but I don't want to get into this debate. This is for another time. I would beg you to focus on our budget, and yeah, I would like you to proceed. Some of the questions that you have may likely be answered by Yale's presentation, so bear with us. Again, the clock is ticking on this. It's not an all-night meeting. We only planned an hour and a half. We're more than willing to go longer than that, and we will go longer than that. But I want to just ask you to have some patience and hope that these questions are answered as the presentation continues.
Still haven't had my other question answered. We pay the wages of the staff, substantial portion of the budget. I've been told by Stuart Horn that he does not have to defend the actions of the staff. Who is responsible for the staff? And I don't want Gary to answer this one because he has not addressed it on several occasions. I've given him the opportunity. So will one of the other gentlemen here care to answer that question, please?
I will answer that question. I worked for government my entire career. And so, thank you. Each area of employment has a hierarchy with managers in it. The people that work are accountable to the managers, and the managers are all accountable to the CAO. So there is that employment hierarchy, which is in basically every type of service that you have, whether it's private or government. There is a hierarchy with management that's in place. There are checks and balances that are there.
I'm sorry, Mayor, but what I'm hearing is the word solid. The question is, who is responsible for the staff? And the CAO tells me he is not responsible for them. He will not defend their actions. Who is responsible for them? I've yet to get an answer to that question anytime from Craig Stanley, Stuart Horn, or from Gary Jackman. No one's answered that question. And quite honestly, I'm tired of the word salad. I pay almost $1,000 in house taxes. Large parts of that go to the RDCK. I've been treated extremely poorly by the RDCK, and I want to answer that question. And answer who is responsible. A name, that's all I want. I don't want a word salad. I want a name.
I gave you an answer.
Which is the word salad? It's a word salad answer. A word salad, you know what that is? It's a derogatory term for tell me something useful. I'm not hearing, I haven't heard from anyone. I'm not trying to be mean here, but this has been going on for quite some time. I have not gotten an answer from anyone.
As I said, we have a hierarchy of management.
Thank you.
Stuart at the top.
All right, thank
Go ahead, yeah.
We'll move on. And just as part of that hierarchy, Stuart answers to the board. So Stuart is the single employee that reports to the board. So ultimately, the board is responsible through Stuart and through the various managers and supervisors for all the staff. That's about as short as I can make it.
That answer is not consistent with how I have been treated by email, by any RDCK member. I ask you not to do it with what I have been dealt with. Any of my questions.
Okay, lots of questions, trying to get back to where we were. So this table here shows the electoral areas. There's lots of numbers in the middle, but let's just focus on the far left, which are the three areas A, B, and C, the town of Creston, and the total tax requisition change for each of the areas. So 9% for A, 11 for B, 8.8 for C, and 4.9 for Creston. For instance, but area E, you can knock 3% off of that for the non-market change, so an existing homeowner would see about 8, and 1% off the others. So this, and then the overall average for the regional district is 9.3, and in the next slide, the actual overall average, once you adjust for non-market change, is just under 8%.
Yep, there's a question online.
Okay, we have a question online.
Area I with a question, could you ask? Is he still muted?
Okay, well,
Someone from area I, do you have a question? AG?
okay, we'll move on. We've got lots of questions from A, B, and C, and the town of Creston, so we'll move on from area I. So overall outlook for 2024, again, 9.3% increase in overall taxation, but 7.9% average for existing property owners. As mentioned earlier, there's a cost of living index increase of 6.2% for staff and director stipends. So that's part of bylaw or part of the terms and conditions of employment. And that 6.2% is basically a catch up from prior years. So 2 years ago, when inflation was running, reported at around 8%, staff received an increase of just over 4%. So this is basically more or less a catch up from that. So we were asked, okay, is it fair and equitable for wages to go up the rate of inflation? So we looked at the numbers, looked back 7 years and 24 years for the broader public sector in BC, and basically wages in the broader public sector have kept up with inflation. So that's what's driving that wage increase. So next item, so inflation and supply chain constraints continue to have an impact across many services and projects in the regional district, and often exceeding the consumer price index. I spoke recently with our capital projects manager, and he's been talking to contractors that are looking to do some construction work, and they've all basically said the cost of everything they do, their equipment, purchase equipment's more than doubled, their interest rates on all their loans have doubled or tripled, their wages have gone up, and they have no choice but to pass that on to us when they bid on their projects. So the 5 or 6% inflation rate we currently see, a lot of the items we're buying or contractors that we'd be engaging or getting bids from, they're still increasing 10, 15, or 20%. Those same interest rates are putting pressure on, I'll just finish this slide, please. So these interest rate increases are also putting pressure on the regional district. So we have a number of loans, both short-term and long-term, including this facility. And as you know, a long-term loan matures and gets flipped over, we take on a new, a higher interest payment on that. So it has hit that facility and will impact the tax bill for this service. But to counter that, there's a partial offset to increased investment income, but that investment income is mainly tied to our reserves that are attached to our services, and that investment income goes to top up those reserves, so hopefully they can keep up with inflation, but as we know, they basically aren't. And another main project initiative that we're working on at the regional district is an asset management plan. So we've currently engaged a consultant that's doing a study, and in a few months we'll come up with a report to help drive our longer term asset management planning. Okay, question at the microphone?
Yes, thank you. So just a few numbers to get a proper perspective. So we asked the food bank how many people they were servicing in a month, and we got 1,200 to 1,800. Which is huge, and since 2021, they've had a 35% increase each year, and they're dealing with 450 families. So that's showing it's not just you guys having to deal with incredible inflation, and people's salaries are not following with inflation. So I would like to know that with the 10% increase that the directors are looking at, has that been decided or is that still in discussion?
The directors,
Salary increase.
the directors get a stipend, it's 6.2. So the director's stipend increase is written into bylaw, and it's the same increase that staff gets. So there was never a mention inside the board for 10% increase. That 6.2% is driven by a formula that was approved by the previous board. The current board, by design, does not influence their change in stipend.
Well, okay, then, if that's the correct answer, then a 6.2 increase for the director's salaries. And other service industries, nurses, whatever, they are not getting those kind of increases. Union jobs. Right. So they're getting maybe 3% over 4 years or something.
Okay, so I could address that. So healthcare workers, the BCGU, and some other provincial related unions and public sector did get large increases last year, approaching 6%. So the regional district is about a year behind those. So I do know healthcare workers that with the inflation add-on last year, received increases of about 6%. So the regional district is about a year behind that. So with healthcare workers getting 3% this year, and next year the regional district staff will be about a year behind, and that's what we'd expect.
They got 6% over how many years?
They got 6% for last year. So the regional district employees will get 6% this year. So I hope.
I lived on RN for 35 years. I just retired. And I don't know what they got this year, but I can tell you for 35 years, if I got 1% increase a year, it was amazing. Amazing. So now, prices are going up, people are struggling. For a 6.2 raise is ridiculous.
Do you know what?
If my neighbors, the moment, I was just shocked by that lady's statistics. She just said 12 to 1,800 people were using the food bank. But we just established earlier that there were just over 14,000 people in the whole valley. That's like 12, 13, 14%. 1,200. That is an awful lot of people to be using the food bank, and yet we're giving these huge increases for director's stipends.
Can you tell me, is it ever said when people ask, like the library, the rec center, whatever it might be, they say how much they want in their budget? Are they ever told, back off, you're gonna have to cut back and tighten your belt? The people do not have the money. In our own homes, we don't have the money, we have to cut back. We don't get to go to somebody else and say, give us money. We don't care whether you have it or not. Do you ever tell people they must cut back their budgets?
I could answer that.
It's an RN also, and I never, ever got big raises like this.
I would like to answer that question if I could. We have 20 directors that sit around the table at the regional district. When we discuss budgets and needs, we ask the same questions that you're asking, and we make the same comments that you're asking, that you're suggesting to us, because we're the ones that are answerable to you. And when you...
I gotta say one thing, the silent majority is not gonna speak up, and anybody in any political position is going to be held accountable. That's the big difference, is a lot of people just turn their backs and didn't really give a crap about anything, but it's all changing now. Like, this is just our future.
But what I'm telling you is that we have these discussions at the table, and we do say to our staff that we do not want increases that much. What you're seeing here is the result of our discussions, and there have been cutbacks there. When you talk about negotiated wages, we are negotiating with unions, and as the same with the BCDU in the town of Creston, those are union negotiations between our management and union that we as a board have to approve once we've reached a settlement, a proposed settlement, we have to approve it. And when you are negotiating wages, it's a competitive field. There's a recruitment and retention problem in a lot of government businesses, and private as well. So wages are what attract people. If we don't pay people wages, we don't get the people that work for us, we can't deliver the services. And a good example is building inspections. We've had a very difficult time keeping building inspectors because we don't have enough. We would love to have a full complement of them, but there is a lot of difficulty in recruiting and retaining staff. And people go to other jobs that pay higher. We don't have an unemployment problem in most of the province because there are lots of jobs. So people, if they're not content with their wages and their job, they look for a higher wage job. So these negotiations take place with unions. They take time and they get ratified after we have the discussion at the board level as well. So yes, we're accountable for that, but it's not like we just snap our fingers and choose a number. It's a negotiated number to keep people there and to keep them earning a living. And whether you agree or not with the wage that's there, we have to staff these positions to deliver a service, and we're doing our best to do that. Well, I can't answer that question, whether they are or not, because I don't know, but if a person needs a food bank because he has a lower wage, and there are jobs with a higher wage there, I'm sure that they would consider that, and I'd like you to continue, because, if we debate each part of this, whether we did the right thing about wages, we've already done that, and it was done through negotiation that were approved by the board. Okay, that part is done. We're not going to change that tonight. We want to explain to you what the budgets are and what you're getting for it. We would like you to be patient so that we can answer those questions. And again, some of the questions you're asking will likely be answered throughout this presentation. And if not, then I would again welcome questions at the end of it.
Okay, thanks again for all being here. I would believe in bylaws, the permit. This is about building permits, okay? And it won't take long, right? Just my nightmare here with a letter in the mail for a final inspection. Okay, the guy comes over. There was 3 inspectors, right? He's the final inspector, and then he says I need to do 3 things, right? So anyways, I got him done. They don't get back yet, so I call him up. He says he's got no check off on the framing, insulation, and vapor barrier. Now the second guy was there 4 times. We're looking up at the vapor barrier. He says make sure there's no holes in there. So what I'm saying is, the guy gets back in his car, and he says he's liable, right? And I'm going, okay. So they want me to open up the walls. I go to Chris Gain, I'm there, the manager, right? He says, I got him convinced if what I'm saying is true, it's a mess, right? So anyways, he don't get back to me, I call him back. I got him convinced to go talk to the guy, right? I call him, he says, what's going on? He says he's between a rock and a hard place, right? It's just a little addition on my double wide trailer. It's a mess, it's a nightmare, right? So anyways, that's only one part of it. So now we got a housing crisis. The government was here, they said they're gonna give $2 billion for homes, right? So I decided I was gonna build a little community jack on my property, right? So this guy puts a stop work order. I don't need a building permit to put, I was gonna sell it, right? There's a guy down the road there, he builds sheds. He don't have to have a building permit, so it's a big mess, right? I got lawyers working on this, it's a nightmare. And this guy here, he's got the mental capacity to understand. He can't be responsible for the guy that was there 3 times, and he wants me to open up the walls. So now it's getting personal.
Can I remind you, this is a budget meeting, and our chief financial officer is not going to solve your building permit problem.
Well, no, I just want to bring it up here.
Well, I appreciate that, but we do have to do, this is a public consultation for our budget. This is not. Well, thank you for that. I would like you to keep your comments polite. We're polite to you, and I don't, we don't need that in here, okay?
The guy in the back's been waiting a few minutes.
You're frustrated, but we don't need rudeness and anger here. I'm trying to get to our budget meeting.
Well, I want to answer.
Well, this is the budget meeting. Let me remind you. Maybe they're not treated well either.
We had a question way back there.
Go ahead with your question. Go ahead.
So as it pertains to increases in wages, government inflation, inflation in general, we all understand everything's going on. To the best of my knowledge, you guys have more or less blamed this on everything increasing in price. Where does that stop downhill? Because from my knowledge, people who are a nurse, an RN, people who are in carpentry, getting paid from contractors, none of those wages have gone up. Literally none of them have gone up in 5, 10, 12 years. But yet everything else is.
Good question.
I would like us to continue, please.
I just want to add one more thing about interest rates, which you have mentioned, that interest, that some of your loans are coming mature and you have to remortgage or whatever you call it in government. But interest rates are also, that's happening, remortgaging, renewal of mortgages is also happening in the public sector. And at the higher interest rates, they cannot afford to pay their mortgages anymore. So this, coupled with usage of the food bank, I think that really needs to be addressed by the government, by the municipal government, by the RDCK and the provincial government, and recognize that maybe we do have to do a little tightening of the belt. Like the people who cannot barely pay their mortgage or have to go and access the food bank in order to eat and feed their family.
They say an unusual increase in the total outstanding mortgage balances. They removed the mortgage and debt data tables in question from their website to investigate. When has CMHC ever removed that to investigate? That shows how big of an increase that people are having with their mortgage debt. And besides the food bank, we've heard that. And then 4 years ago, top financial analysts were telling us we're going to recession. We're in a full-blown depression. People are losing homes. You don't understand. People can't afford to eat meals. This is serious. We don't have time to waste on silly.
One of the things that probably don't appreciate, all of us up here as directors, we don't have a full-time wage here. We are paid part-time for full-time work. We're not trying to be paid.
I don't know if this is the crowd for sympathy.
Okay, I'm sorry if I've stirred that up, but we work full-time for far less, and that's why it's hard to get people in these positions, because it's not a money-making position. But yeah, I would like you to continue. Excuse me, everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
So Forrest Gump said, I'm not a very smart man. So I look at everything here tonight, and I've been to so many meetings over the last few months. Climate Action Plan, the 5G Tower in Wendell, out in Canyon, we had a meeting the other night, all the meetings that are going on in the community. And what's happening is I think what we see is an increasing level of frustration among the taxpayers and the citizens. It starts from our federal government, our provincial government, to our municipal government, and we feel you people do not hear us. You look at a 6.5% raise. So if you've done that over 4 years, your wages have gone up 25% in the last 4 years during the toughest time in the last 40 years for Canadians. I think we are fed up with the over-intrusion of the government in our life. You look at what's happening in Creston right now. we need to get permission to have chickens.
It's ridiculous.
And we need to buy.
That's ridiculous.
And we need to buy a $20 permit. And our chickens have to be in bed at 7 o'clock at night. And have to be out of bed at 7 o'clock in the morning. So then you come here with these plans, the climate action plan, the city operating plan. They are so confusing and so ambiguous that all we want to do is be treated like human beings. We look at it, we understand, I think, as adults, that things cost money. It costs money to run a town. But when everybody is hurting, the food bank is exploding, we're at each other's throats, is the wrong way to be. We can't get builders in town because the red tape and the onerous process of getting building permits is crazy. Industry doesn't want to come to Creston because they can't house their employees. Again, red tape, bureaucratic overreach. It has to stop. It has to stop. The people are fed up. There's nothing left in our pockets.
Right, the taxpayers broke.
We talk about all the reasons, what you guys are doing, what the city is getting. I quickly looked at the numbers. The amount of money, 42% is spent on salaries, and you say you put money in the budget for people that aren't even working here yet. Do we really need those people if we're not here yet? We need to set that money aside.
Can I answer that question, and we really have to move on?
Anyway, thank you very much.
Right, just to clarify that, that's not for positions that aren't here yet. That's for people who leave during the year for other positions, and often they'll leave for a higher wage. Somewhere else, they'll leave for a higher wage, and it takes an incredible amount of costs to recruit, train, and get somebody else up to speed in that job. So the regional district is in a competitive job market with others in the public sector, others in the private sector. And that's one of the reasons that the wages are increasing to hopefully retain some of our employees. Stay higher.
Comparison, Okanagan and Stokely have a population of 90,000 and change. They have a staff of 111. Creston Valley has a population of
Oh, can I, excuse me,
300,000, no. And
We have
then my job is 140. East River has a population of 61,000 and a staff of 59. RDCK has a population of 61,000. They have 400 staff.
So no, that's a good question on the surface, but what you really need to look at is what services do those regional districts provide? Do they run 3 major recreational facilities? Do they have 17 fire halls? You know, do they, so it's really, you have to look at it in a service to service comparison. The regional district of Central Kootenai is, I think, the only one that's got 3 major rec centers in partnership with its municipalities. So it's not an apples to apples comparison to other regional districts to use their population, including the municipalities, to derive to how many staff that regional district should have.
Well, the fire, actually, bring up a good one, is the fire department. It's got 22 people listed on your site. So there's a fire department chief and deputy chief for all the fire departments, which is great. Thank you to them. And then you've got top heavy, how many fire chiefs and deputy chiefs visit within the regional district office? We've already got fire chiefs and deputy chiefs.
And I'll touch upon that later in the slide. I talked about what the regional fire service provides and what they look after. So we have a regional fire chief and two deputy chiefs. All right, so quick slide on project initiative alignment with the strategic plan. And we really need to move on here. We want to get through this and provide you with some more information. We do appreciate your questions. So I will skip through this a little bit. So we'll go through the services now. So S100's general admin. So this includes corporate admin, finance, IP, human resources, CEO, and the municipal directors. So again, that's 6.2 wage increase. I'll touch upon one of the items that, just to show you that 6% cost increases don't apply to everything. So the region district 8 years ago bought Microsoft 2016 for its staff to use for about $400 per employee, use it for 8 years. That works out to about $50 per year. A couple of years ago, Microsoft told us, you can't use that anymore. We're not going to upgrade it. It's not going to be a secure product. You need to move on to Microsoft 365. We said, okay, if that's going to be expensive, we looked at all our other options, but the cost of Microsoft replacement from 2016 has gone from $50 a year to $50 a month. So that's 1,000% increase, and that's just one portion of our cost. But that's a good example where you know, costs far exceed inflation, and you know, that basically added $225,000 to our expenses this year.
Or if the cure opens also alternatives.
We looked at those.
They're way better.
Yeah, for sure. And so, you know, there was a website that we've acknowledged is not net user friendly. So the board approved a $70,000 for completing that website. So in this service, there's a 11% increase in taxation driven by those items.
Can we try area I one more time?
Okay, we have a question from area I.
Area I, can you unmute, please?
Certainly. Can you hear me?
Just barely.
I will speak up if I can. Obviously, if you're reading the room, people are getting frustrated due to hard economic times that we're experiencing, not only from our local municipal governments, but provincial and federal governments as well. I'm curious. I know that Andy Davidoff from Area I, the director for Area I, had submitted several motions to try and lower taxes in this particular budget. One was that the directors did not take a 6.2% increase in their stipend, and it didn't even get seconded. I would like to hear from the directors that are there and even online, just because they have claimed that they have gone over this budget with a fine-tooth comb and have made suggestions on how to cut it. I would like to hear what motions they've put forward that were either accepted or not, and how they tried to reduce this budget. We're all under a tremendous amount of economic pressure, and you have no offense to you, but the only point you made about how a comparable labor force would get a 6% increase was one that was also a government entity, also unionized. And I find that incredibly ironic that the people who make and govern the labor laws, the workforce that works for them requires a union. But regardless of that, I would like to know what the directors who are attending this meeting have done to try and lower this budget so that we can afford it. Thank you.
There's different level of influence, if you can speak to it that way, that we each have. So I got one vote out of 4 when we talk here. I got one vote out of 1 for some of our services. I got one vote out of 20 or less, actually, because it's prorated by population that goes to the board as a whole. So economic development, 0 increase for area A. Rec 9, 0 increase for area A for both the 10th year in a row. Discretionary grant, 0 increase for area A. Yet people are always on my back. I can't have money for this, to be money for that. I say justify it, show me what are we leveraging? How is that good for the community? We're not increasing taxes on that. Shared service with Director Vandenberg. Staff saying, well, let's replace this $750,000 fire truck. I pointed out something because I am reasonably well educated in budget requirements, fire underrated service, and how things work. I said, we can defer that purchase for 5 years. And that's what we're doing. We're deferring that purchase for 5 years. Greendale Fire comes to mind and said, well, maybe this is here we can replace our bush bike. Has a home tank in the back with water, and if you got a little spot fire in your yard and an acreage, it's a great machine. It's four-wheel drive for pickup. You get into where a lot of people can't, and maybe not that spot, or the rate we had was good enough for now. I said it's gonna be good enough now, because if you look at other costs in terms of building renovations like community center and the like, people have told me over and over, that's what they want to spend money on this year. You don't need that other thing. I had a request for increase in training and some of the other budgets that weren't justifiable based on last year's utilization. I said, tell you what, we're not increasing those things this year. We can change our financial plan mid-year and go on the reserve funding, but we're not going to increase taxation this year until I see better data from the regional chief and deputy chiefs on exactly who on the roster needs the training, who stepped up the training, are we going to utilize that? So there's decisions we make as directors continually, and there are more. Remember the list? Everybody in Area A pays for this and that huge list of discrete services within Area A. Yeah, I examined every one of those in addition to speaking to my colleagues about the shared services. Another example, jumping another. Okay. Fire service window lake. We struggle to get volunteers. Like, we increase the budget, we increase the incentives, try to face people with training opportunity, which is maybe if you're working in the mill, it's good to have some of the first aid training that actually also helps you in your job, as well as your great support for your community in terms of road rescue or lift assist for ambulance, all the other things that they do. We weren't getting there. So we said, there's got to be a better way to do it. What is a better way we've done? We've partnered with the town of Creston. We've supported the training facility instead of guys going to Cranbrook and Castlegar and beyond for training. We're putting the administration and management of the volunteers under a larger economy of scale with Creston. And we're doing well. We now meet the standards to provide the service and provide the insurance reduction, which is a whole lot more money than taxes for all those residents who are at risk of losing that. So we make decisions like this all the time. That doesn't increase your taxes, sometimes decreases your taxes, and eventually, yeah, you're going to see a lift because we're not blind to real costs. So just a few examples of how we are continually working this. To make a big, bold, let's do this. And these were grandstand, not my style, methodical, detailed, actual. What makes sense, what does not make sense. Somebody said you want to get into this rec center. Yeah, we can have no employees, lower costs, close the doors. Tell me what you want us not to do. Tell me tomorrow. G. Jackman at rdck.bc.ca. Always open to that conversation. Tell me what you do not want us to do. Be specific, because I'm very specific on budget detail. I don't grant except right now. But I'm leaving in 5 minutes for my birthday. So.
Happy birthday.
Okay, we have a question way back there.
Yeah, I do. You can sense frustration in this group is increasing by the minute. You're not listening to them. People are hurting bad in this area, and it's getting worse by the day. And it's interesting, just some of the statistics that have come out on British Columbia. First of all, I'll just give you one on Canada. Canadian households, debt to income ratio has reached 185%. So that's across Canada. What that means is Canadians owe $1.85 for every dollar they make after taxes. All right, so the total debt, government debt in British Columbia, this is just the provincial government and Crown corporations, $92.611 billion, third worst in Canada. Only exceeded by Ontario and Quebec, and they have 4.4 times population greater than BC. This debt number has been rising at an average rate of 11.8% for the last 4 years. That's British Columbia. If you sense frustration, that affects us, every one of this room directly. And it reduces our purchasing power and leaves us at risk for all kinds of bad things to happen. That incidentally works out in British Columbia as a share of every man, woman, and child in this province owes their household $66,248 per household. Not done yet. Okay, looking at your RDCK draft financial plan on page 21. Your total taxation is going up this year 10%. Reaffirmed on page 6 of your budget document. The projected overall tax increase of approximately 11% for 2024 is likely. Majority of those tax increases are related to staff increases and wage and benefit increases. None of us experienced that. My taxes in the last 10 years in the RDCK have gone up more than 10% every year. You can't carry on at that level. It just is not a possibility. And you're getting all this stuff pushed at you from the provincial government. Climate action plan, this rezoning bylaw that's already been passed. The health minister now has incredible powers. It's doing huge damage to the health system because there's doctors leaving the province right now because they're afraid of the $500,000 fine that he has the authority to place on them if they say something that doesn't agree with the narrative. They can also be sent to jail for up to 2 years. That's a really good recruitment advertisement for doctors.
There are doctors.
If you're not prepared to listen, this will give you an idea of how frustrated people have become. If anybody thinks that this budget needs to be looked at again, and there needs to be something brought into the rationalization, either a moratorium, the whole of what it was last year, the expenditures, or something that's greater than what you're proposing. So anybody that's in agreement with that, a moratorium or a suspension, we're not going to support this budget. We're not going to approve it. Raise your hand if you agree with that. Does that give you a picture of what you're looking at? Anybody that agrees with this budget presented here tonight, just raise your hand.
Excuse me, I do have projection to use that I disagree with it, because I don't know enough about that budget. I do know that I'm a serial volunteer. And often I have approached our directors for doing different services within our community, and they're extremely tight with this budget. To my frustration most of the time.
Sorry, we can't, he's not again.
Use the mic.
I really do not want anybody to speak for me when it comes to the budget because I haven't been able to examine it. But I do want to let you know that I have spent decades in this community, serving this community mostly as a volunteer. And often I come to the directors asking for them to support different services and projects in the community. And they have in some degree, but most of the time I'm frustrated because they're extremely tight with your money. And that is where I find that I'm spending most of my energy and working in this community is trying to be able to help people understand that this is a municipality approach, there's provincial and there's federal. But within, for instance, if you look at economic development, Area A has a commission. There is a mill rate that it can go to. But often we don't even spend a small percentage of what's we're capable of spending for economic development. But we, the people, have to be able to say, we want to change the situation when it comes to things like poverty. We want to become more vibrant community. We want to have jobs and better paying jobs. But if we don't get involved and we actually become part of the solution and look at ways to approach it, they're not going to spend a dime. We have to be able to let them know what we want. Anyways, I'm sorry for ranting, but I've been sitting on this for a while.
Okay, we'll move on to S11, rural admin. So this houses the rural director expenses, regional fire services, and bylaw services. One of the good news stories here is we were successful in getting a $474,000 fire training grant to support firefighter wages, equipment, and other training costs. There's a 50% total increase in this service, and I think it also includes some money for some additional equipment. Okay, Eric. So this is, Town of Creston doesn't participate in these. We have their own building inspection and planning service. But Area A, B, and C participate in building inspection. So there's a 20% increase in building inspection budget, largely driven by a fairly large drop off in permit revenue, and also an increased number of building inspectors to meet demand of the previous year's permit. So building bylaws were updated and increased last year to offset the cost of new staff, which are currently being onboarded. In planning, there's a 2% tax decrease, so operations are stable and on budget there, and there's a list of projects. GIS, so graphical information services, there's a 2% taxation decrease. And there'll be a strategic assessment of this service this year. Local conservation fund, so Area A only, so Gary's left, so we can't speak to it. So it's partial tax based, and that service is expanding to other areas. Area F was added last year.
Excuse me, do you think you could please tell us what GIS means?
Graphical information systems.
What is
geographical information systems? So it's basically a digital mapping service that provides maps for various services in regional districts. Yes, computerized. It's, yeah. So S105, community sustainability, so no change in taxation. Projects include protection of drinking water and watersheds, several climate action initiatives. The big initiative last year was going through the engagement feedback with, I think, about 13 town halls in the area. So that's working towards a revised climate action plan. And also, and energy fall under here as well. Question? Oh, there's, you use the mic, please.
What I don't quite understand is, if I had a rental property, the most I can raise the rent is 2 to 3% a year. 2.5. Yet you have the authority to raise our taxes 11.4%. I live in Lister. My water bill goes up 12% a year. It just doesn't add up. And getting back to the building permit from the other gentleman who spoke, I have to agree with 100%. It takes a year to get a building permit and it costs thousands.
And they're putting out 20%.
And before that even gets started, you can't afford it.
So we did a better survey across the province and what other municipalities and regional districts are what increases they're looking at, and it ranges from, I think the lowest is around 6 and the highest is about 13.5 on average. So the regional, the RDCK is falling about in the middle of that. So I think local government in general is getting, it is seeing cost increases that are affecting inflation. So the regional district is not an outlier from that perspective.
Paul, is that true that you put solar panels on the rec center?
That is true.
That is true, yes.
How much is that costing?
That's largely, do you want to speak to it?
Yeah, through the chair. So we put solar panels on the roof. My name's Craig Stanley. I'm the regional manager of operations and asset management. I work in Creston. I live in Creston. Sorry, usually that's not a problem. Sorry. My name's Craig Stanley. I'm the regional manager of operations and asset management. I live in Creston. I've lived in Crawford Bay since 2009, moved to Creston in 2020. The rec center, we installed a solar array on the roof with Columbia Basin Trust funds. It was $100,000 for us to install, and the Columbia Basin Trust contributed $75,000 to that. And the facility uses so much power that on a sunny day, we're using every kilowatt hour that solar array makes. So it's going directly to offset the use in this facility. So that is true.
So it's directly tied to the building?
It's
Or it's tied to the grid?
It's tied to both, but we'll never sell power back to the grid because this facility uses so much energy.
And they'll only give you 10% anyways, even if you were to.
No, we offset the overall use of this facility 2% for the whole year. That's correct.
2%?
So how much dollars does that equate to?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have that number. It's something like 43,000 kilowatt hours a year.
2% for $100,000.
Could you clarify, please? Did you say it cost $100,000 and you got $75,000 from Columbia Basin Trust, or it cost $175,000?
No, sorry, it was 100. The actual project was $105,000 total. We spent 102, so we saved 3,000. We haven't finished that. Taxpayers paid 28,000.
28,000 taxpayer dollars.
That's right.
On the solar panels, I read the article they put out. I think it was a local paper, Creston now, local publication anyway. The numbers that I think Joe Schrico was presenting the numbers. Those are optimum numbers. He was talking about how much money he was going to save over 30 years. Solar panels only last 7 to 10 years at most. The kilowatt hours you're putting forward are optimum. Optimum. This is not an optimum area for solar energy. We have winter, we have clouds, we have snow. For 4.5 to 6 months of the year, I just don't have my geography book with me, but I think we'd be pretty close on that. So the numbers that you put forward were false. And I'd be happy to review that with you in private in your office. And they were false. And there were other numbers there that we sat down and we took them apart, and they were just patently absurd. So I really did have a problem with that. And back onto the budget, so I'm trying to stick with budget matters. The climate action, go back a couple of slides, you had a sustainability in there, something about climate action plan, I believe. That there's no tax increase. Oh yeah, that was it. I have read the climate action plan. I've written business plans. I'm not a CFO, but I've written business plans. They at least have a 5-year cash flow. That plan outlined at best. There is nothing in there that tells us how much it's going to cost. I was at an RDCK meeting in Nelson, and it was made clear that there's going to be pretty significant tax increases over the next few years because of the climate action plan. And yet today I'm being told that, well, at least for years, there's not going to be any change in taxation. I have to express my opinion. I don't believe you for the simple reason that I have not even been able to ascertain exactly who wrote the climate action plan. I've had 4 different answers, and the last one was indirectly received. It was Paris telling us that she wrote it. But I noticed that she didn't say that until after the town halls or the open houses were conducted. Gary Jackman, I think, came closest to the truth when he told me that it was written offshore with a local spin put on it by hard wordsmiths. Before that, I was told that the Eco Society, which is now formerly known as Neighbors United, wrote it. So, I mean, I couldn't even find out who wrote this thing. Supposedly it's to save the planet, but no one put their name on it. I find it highly unusual. So I really question that there's not going to be a change in taxation from your climate action outline, because it's not a plan. There's not $1 figure in there. But the word control appears, I believe, 68 times. So naturally, some of us are a little concerned with what that means, especially as it affects taxation. And to address the manager's salaries, it's not just the the director's salary, excuse me, it's just not their salary's gone up. All the salaries have gone up across the board. I read another one about you hired 3 managers for the waste control, waste disposal. I don't have exact terminology here. Now, I understand that they're having a hard time finding staff. So according to the article I read, they hired 3 managers because they're short on staff. And the reason why they were short on staff, the article said, was because morale was poor because there weren't enough managers around to keep morale up. I've never heard such a ludicrous statement in my life. I've worked in many, many fields, and usually morale is at its highest when the boss is nowhere to be seen. Thank you.
Okay, so the climate action plan, the latest revision, will be coming in front of the board within the next couple of months, so that it hasn't been publicly made available yet, but it will be publicly available in a couple of months, incorporating all the feedback that was given over the last couple of years.
So it's not in this budget yet, the climate action plan, so sustainability,
Yeah, the regional district,
but they're not in this plan?
the regional district. Yeah. Okay.
Just remember, the planet's been warming up ever since the ice age.
Can I remind you, this is the budget meeting, we have not passed climate action plan. So we, as it stands, we do not have a climate action plan because we've not passed one. The plan that has been written, it's been revised, and we've revised it through public consultation with comments from the regional directors. So for you to say that there's a climate action plan is not accurate because we have not passed one. It is not finished yet, it is a work in progress. And it has changed substantially for probably an additional 1 acre. So we would like to continue with the budget meeting. Go ahead, yes.
Okay. So emergency management, this is funded through your service funded 57, seeing 27% increase in taxation. So, sorry, so this is the service that plans and prepares for seasonal flooding, wildfires, and drought. So it's responsible for implementing the new Emergency Disaster Management Act, which was brought in last year. So this includes plans, risk assessments, and coordination consultation. The regional district has pushed back the province. There's a number of concerns with this plan, and multiple regional district municipalities have. So we're just waiting to see what the actual impact will be of that. And also under this emergency management falls the neighborhood emergency preparedness program, fire spark programs, and wildfire resilience plans. Okay, so East Resource Recovery 186. So this looks after waste, recycling, and organics. So a 10% increase in taxation and a 10% increase in tipping fees. So part of that increase is driven by, we're legislated as a regional district to look back basically at legacy landfills and do landfill assessments on them. So some of these landfills actually predate the regional district. As we're legislatively responsible for them, we're doing assessments, which may lead to future work and remediation work on those. And the Creston landfill, where we've got a number of assessments underway, and as well as some procurement of lands around that landfill.
Do you think that the $14 million that's owed to the RDCK by Recycle BC could cover that?
Yeah, we're not owed for 14,000. So the regional district has on a regular basis lobbies and approaches the government about the shortfall in funding to fully costs the recycling service. So we get about a 20% of our costs are covered, and then the provincial agency then looks after transporting the recyclables and processing them. But even given that, yeah, there's a shortfall. We're very well aware of it. Running, $500,000 plus a year in costing out that service. So the regional district very much is aware and is pushing back to try to change that.
What's the pushback on that, trying to get that money to?
It's to change how that plan is costed. It's very low opportunity that we're going to go. It's going to go back any number of years, or low probability that those costs will be recovered, and we'll do what we can to change that going forward.
Can I ask a clarification?
Yes.
You said legislation, is that provincial legislation?
That's provincial, yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. So Creston complex, which we touched upon a bit today, a 4% increase in taxation, looking to a increase in user fees, mainly driven by fitness, increased fitness use, expectation of aquatics to be back to pre-pandemic levels. A number of capital projects will be going on. East stair covers, solar panel completion, aquatic roof replacement, outdoor washrooms and lighting upgrades, and as well as a budgeted contribution to reserves to cover future expenditures. So we'll switch over to parks and trails and parks now. So there's overall across the region, there's some work will be done on strategic direction for regional park services, including the evaluating and examining regional community parks, developing a common service model, and as part of that, emphasizing financial sustainability. There's a number of park services for Creston, BC. So examining options for establishment of future regional parks, including traditional study implementation. Area A, we talked about this at there was a budget meeting in Rindell a few weeks ago. Work on Crawford Bay and the Rindell Regional Park. And then back to Area A, repeated the last slide. So this shows the increase in regional parks going back to 1970. Some fairly large increase in parks, both mainly in the west side of the Central Kootenay, but a few in the east as well. We'll just touch upon a few of the granting services. So the library grant service, see a 6% increase, cemetery 4%, museum no increase, and the airport 18% increase.
Yep. Question over.
Oh, sorry, question over there. Yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, was that 43,000 kilowatt hours per year that the solar panels on the rec center do?
Yeah, no, I can double check that for you after. I can fact check that for you.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because if it is, then 10 cents per kilowatt hour is not a great investment, especially if it only lasts 10 years. But
so I'll just clarify one thing. Thanks for the question. I did want to clarify one thing about the solar panel project. We had studies done by the proponents. We had 4 proposals on this solar panel project, and they all used computer models to tell us what the theoretical sunlight for the Creston area are. Yes, it's winter time for 5 months in Creston, but the sun does shine and we can make power. But the goal with that is to put money back into the system. The solar panels that we purchased have a shelf life of 30 years. They will have a payback, meaning totally free, with the grant money in 7.5 years. So the 10-year life expectancy is is old technology. With the new technology, we're being told that it's 30 years.
Is that still only for, was that 43,000 a year, was that correct?
I'll just fact check that for you real quick.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Question in the back?
I was just wondering if you guys were able to ask Columbia Basin Trust for the funding to put solar panels on this building. Could we not ask them for money for other revenue generating things that maybe we use in this valley?
Yeah, no, good question. The way the Columbia Basin Trust works is they create their grant streams. I mean, some of it, they give us funds to, we do manage applications for some of the grant streams. So there's a number of grants that various organizations and in the central Kootenai, they apply for those grants and those are open. But the way the Columbia Basin Trust works, they say, we're gonna provide this much money towards energy efficiency products. I mean, similar to Fortis. And then you either apply for it and get it. There is no option to say, oh, can we use that somewhere else? So those funds are available for that particular purpose. That opportunity is identified here, and that project was taken on here.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of other ways that we can decrease the increases. You know, we can maybe.
Yeah. So we do look at all various grants that are available for various aspects, but they're fairly limited. So there's no grants available that are very general purpose. But we do have grants that flow through us, like community works, where directors make decisions to help offset taxation for example, improvements to infrastructure such as fire halls and other assets. So we do have funding available that we are able to allocate to at a more general basis to offset taxation. But some grants are very specific that can be used. Just going back to community works grants, we can't use them for fire trucks, but we could use it for on the haul for improvements for Alt and our community centers.
Yeah, that's real about other money anyways, right?
Well, it either lowers taxation or offsets increases in taxation.
Any grants to help the hospital to get doctors? You see how many people don't have doctors here.
Right.
Is there anything you can do through that to get some more doctors or some help these people that need doctors?
So we do the regional district through one of its economic development commissions does fund a doctor recruitment program to work on recruiting doctors to this area.
What about upgrading the hospital?
So that the hospital falls outside the regional district decision making. So we are part of the district hospital board, and through that various capital projects are funded, but we're not a decision making authority in regards to what goes on at the hospital here.
I just want to have a little clarity on this, if you could, just for me, because I don't understand it. So when you say the airport in 18% increase in taxation, what does that actually mean? What does that look like? Does that mean we're getting taxed extra 18% to give to the airport, or what does that mean?
Yes, basically.
Yes, and so it's looking like it's a grant to the airport?
Right, so the regional district doesn't run the airport, so but we do fund the airport.
And so what is the grant for? What is the extra 18%?
One of the directors want to speak to that?
So the airport is run by the Airport Society, which is a group that runs it. The airport is actually owned, the land is owned by the town of Creston. The airport provides services such as air ambulance as well as being an airport. They have a lot of challenges. They don't have actual good running water there because they don't have a well. They are working very hard to overcome some of these challenges so they can become a more viable airport. The airport, if it was run the way it desired, it would increase our economic development quite a bit because we could fly products often and directly out of this airport. So I believe the Airport Society, they have come up with a budget and their request is for, they have some specific asks that they have of us that we are helping them on. They also apply for provincial and federal grants, which they occasionally get. But they, over the years, have probably gotten behind in their budget management because they weren't submitting us financial reports with updated requests. So they are actually trying to come back to what they haven't been doing. So they haven't had as high increases in the last several years, but they do have some pretty serious needs there that they are asking for. And we've had those discussions at Creston Valley Services with them. We've asked them a lot of questions and we understand why they're asking for this increase. And really, there's a lot that they need to do there yet because they have fallen behind on what they needed to do.
We give them 10%.
Thank you. And I just want to ask a question about property, delinquent property taxes. Do you check that to see how many delinquent property taxes you have in the area A, B, C, and Creston?
So that, I'll answer that. So that's the responsibility of the province.
That's the responsibility of the
Yes,
province?
the province.
Can you ask the province?
So the province collects, is responsible for collecting
Yes.
tax. So we receive the full taxation amount, and then the province is responsible for any unpaid taxes.
And do you communicate with the province regarding residents' ability to pay their property taxes or not? Do you have that communication between you?
No.
Has anybody here asked, hey, how many people aren't paying their taxes or are behind in their taxes?
As far as I know, we don't.
Thank you. I would like to request to have that number, please.
Okay, it's.
Joe just said he could help with the airport, but I don't think it's necessary.
Okay. All right, so area A, Gary's not here, but economic development, S107. No change in taxation, so primarily, this, again, a granting service, they're submitted to application to commission for debate and recommendation. RDCK board, so supporting a number of initiatives and the Economic Action Partnership, support from Imagine Kootenai, and a connectivity project along the East Shore. So Town of Creston B and C also have an economic development service, S108. It's 2% decrease in taxation, as mentioned earlier, supporting the physician recruitment program, Economic Action Partnership, the Creston Valley Visitor Center, as well as the Tourism Society. Water utility services, Sanka and Lister, 6% increase at Sanka, 10% at Lister, and an increase in the capital reserve fund. Some projects there. Erickson, 6% increase, and Arrow Creek, 6.5, with a number of capital projects as well planned. So we'll jump over to fire services now. So the regional service, which is the, oh, we have a question.
Yeah, sorry, that just coupled to the, I just have a question. Everybody's is incredibly beautiful and has a lot of green spaces, and we've got great walking paths and everything, and we've got beautiful water. The RDCK has already stated that it can't maintain the current parks it's already acquired. And when you buy a park, is it true that you don't have to go to a cent vote even though it would cost millions of dollars to purchase a piece of property? Because parks are included in assessed voting?
You want Joe to answer that?
Sure.
Joe, do you want to answer that?
Joe, do you want to?
Through the chair, I could hardly hear the question.
So, is it true we don't have, the regional district doesn't have to go to a cent voting to spend millions of dollars on purchasing new parks?
Under provincial legislation, the regional district doesn't have to go to a cent voting for regional parks. That is correct. For the purchase of property. But that doesn't mean that that's the choice of the directors at the time.
Follow up to that, it seems like it may coincide with other agendas such as rewilding and maybe on the Yellowstone corridor. Would the directors, sorry, there's only a couple of years left, but would you be open to putting a moratorium on any more parkland acquisitions? Just as you've done in the past with water systems that you can't sustain? Because right now we're in a sustainability, you can't sustain the parks you've got, why are you purchasing more?
I don't know if you saw the diagram on parks. We are conspicuous in our absence of parks in the Creston area compared to the rest of the regional district of Central Kootenai. So we have far less parks than any other area. So honestly, we are trying to work on improving our water access, improving access to the river, having some parkland here because we don't have it. We have a Creston Valley Wildlife Management Area that has nothing to do with the regional district. And over the years, we have fallen behind all the other areas on actually acquiring some parkland. So it's a conversation that we're having is we need more access to water. We get a lot of complaints about not having proper access to the south end of Kootenai Lake. There's almost no public beaches where you can just go and access water. On the Goat River, there's no actual public access other than the small park that was done by our Park Society. There's no actual water access to Kootenai River. That is actually a legal land access to what's called the ferry landing. That it's not encouraged use because it's not actually, it's actually Diking District land, and Diking District land is still owned by the Diking District. So we are way behind in that. And it's a conversation I can tell you we are having, and it's important to a lot of people to have more water access and park access. So there may be opposition to it, but we are way behind the rest of the regional district of Central Kootenai in parks here. And that was one of the reasons why the property in Crawford Bay was purchased, and it was purchased through a decision made by those residents. And Gary's not here to talk about it, but if that land had not been purchased there, it would have been another piece of private property that people did not have access to the lake. So again, it is something that we are concerned about because we don't have.
Just in the time of depression, was this really a necessity, or maybe you want to ask people here if they're okay with having moratorium for a few years until we get back on track with our finances.
Make it more funny in every sense and walk of life.
I would like to bring up the point that someone else made, that listen to the room, listen to the frustration, listen to what we're saying. I personally say yes to a moratorium and to hold it. We don't need more. And the other aspect is the undrip that's coming. And so the Trails Society had done a lot of work to create that park along the Goat River, and the band mixed it. So there's a whole bunch of factors going on here, which means right now, money should not be paid to get more parks.
Remember, that may be the feeling in the room, but we do get a lot of people expressing the concern about it and requesting us to do that. So this is what you're telling us in the room, but we are hearing other messages as well. We're not making this up, so it is a concern because we fall behind.
So you listen.
There are more residents in the region in our area than what's in this room, and a lot of them have asked. So what we're hearing here, it's only part of what we listen to from all the residents. So remember that.
Numbers.
Of course, and water access, of course, but we are in inflation going through the roof, taxation, everything, more carbon tax. We're saying that people are struggling and cannot
afford it right now. Yeah, it'd be great to have more parks, but not right now, because that's a condition financially. Perhaps you could offer residents an incentive to donate some land to be able to make trails and offer some more space, because I think that might actually be possible.
I 100% agree with you.
They need an incentive.
So, one of the latest, so there is an incentive, so a donation of land or a donation of funds to purchase a park. The latest park acquisition in the, just outside of Nelson was for donation, both by the landowners and others in the community, and they did receive tax receipts. So their donations were tax exempt for those donations of the new parkland.
Yeah, I just recently retired from the community forest, and on the matter of trails, I think if you look at the history of the community forest, we built numerous new trails open to the public. The Silly Goat Trail, there's the trail that goes up Mount Thompson, there's the east side of Thompson down to Bonnie Lake. A numerous number of trails have been done, and this is just by taking our forest dollars, which the community forest does, and putting the work for us. But there's a big fallacy with the whole thing and with the parks and everything. And when regional district was established, it was a great thing for the provincial government to offload all of the dirty things that they didn't want to do. So they didn't want to face the public. We seen that when BC Jubilee and we got privatized because they didn't want to have a union looking in on the government. So it's our government reneging on services that they actually owe us. And that includes the East Shore water access. If you've ever been over to Midge Creek, the beautiful round logo that the BC government park thing is laying face down in the sand. That's what they care about. So I think we not only have to go after our Central Kootenai needs to go after our provincial government with the voice of the people behind them.
Yes.
It's great to have parks, but we also have to employees to maintain parks.
It's on, just have to speak closer.
We also have to look at the costs of staff to maintain parks. And at the last Zoom meeting, finance RDCK meeting, I listened to park staff make up to $63,000 a year. So I mean, it's great to have more parks, but you have to pay all those people to maintain.
Yes, we went through water. So fire protection, regional level, so responsible for the management of the service, the overarching safety and policy, and to ensure that governance is as required by the Office of the Fire Commissioner and WorkSafe BC. Managing capital projects, group bulk purchasing, including some significant taxation savings through the use of various grants. And we've also applied for a CBT Small Community Wildfire Resiliency Grant. Again, here's a grant by CBT that's very specific and directed towards that. So we've made an application and are hoping to hear back soon. We'll go through the numerous fire services in areas A, B, and C. So Windell Lakeview, 7% increase in taxation. That service is operated under an agreement by the town of Creston. Similar to Canyon Lister, operated under the town of Creston. They'll see an 18% increase in taxation. There's a new engine procurement coming up next year. And yeah, 24% increase in taxation for their fire service. Much of that is driven by increased training wages and increased recruitment and number of firefighters. Across all services, there's continuing need to update personal protection equipment and other gear as regulations change and old gear dated or times out. There's also S-131, so that's properties that are close to the town of Creston, in areas B and C, and their fire protection is provided by the town of Creston. So 13% increase in taxation there. Arrow Creek similar, S-281. So those two services are helping towards as well. Part of that cost is to supporting the new emergency services building. And then West Creston, S-291, a smaller increase in taxation this year, but the big story there is we're going through a process of preparing for a potential public assent vote on a new fire services bylaw and approval for borrowing to complete the fire hall as well as apparatus purchases. And then the Jaws of Life Road Rescue Service, that's 151, 1% increase in taxation. So this service is provided by Rydell, Yack, Town and Creston Fire Departments. So this service is currently under review to ensure that the taxation model is equitable across the area. Emergency 911. So the regional district is largely responsible for procuring 911 services for most of the region, excluding some municipalities. So this the regional district basically enters into agreements, dispatch centers, so 911 dispatch and fire dispatch in Fraser Fort George. The cost of both of those contracts have increased. So those are reflected in that taxation increase. And there's some funding, there will be grant funding supporting a tie-in of GIS into the 911 service. Transit S-234, 7% increase in taxation. So this includes costs of maintenance fees and additional operating hours. Transit services are split between custom and demand and conventional, 63-37. Fairly substantial increase in ridership last year, and we're expecting a similar increase this coming year. Okay, so we're on the pie charts. So these will be the last section of the presentation. So this first pie chart is for the town of Creston, and the right-hand side of the pie chart basically shows in proportion where town of Creston town of Creston's tax bill, the regional portion, district portion of it goes. So on top of that, the town of Creston will be levying its own taxes as well as school and other hospital taxes. So the regional district portion, about 55–60% of the tax bill is related to the recreation facilities. If you add on refuse disposal, you get to about 75, close to 75% of your tax bill, and the other services are smaller proportions for that. The numbers on the right-hand side are the costs for your tax bill per $250,000 of home value. So a modest increase there. And so if your home is worth 500, you double that, 750, you triple that number. So the next area is Area A, if you receive fire services through Windell Lakeview. Recreation now, the facilities is about 40%, fire protection about 20%, and refuse making up the other large chunk, and the other areas smaller. So it's going to be a common theme for areas that have fire protection and pay into rec facilities. So Area A South, no fire protection, so this would be just north of Windell. So most of your, or half of your tax bills were again related to this rec facility, and refuse disposal being the next larger portion. And, area south now, moving a little further north, no fire protection. You don't participate in the, or don't pay into the rec facilities. Your tax bill, is down a fair bit. And now you have a much more even split, refuse disposal, library and regional parks make up about half of your, tax bill. Question back there?
I saw it's, for 250,000.
Yes.
Yeah. And the tax increased $10, but with the mill rate tax system, the properties that are over the average house price get taxed exponentially more than ones that are on the average. And I know that the average property value is gonna be a lot more than 250,000.
Right, so we use 250, so, you know, you can multiply these numbers then. So we could use 100 and you multiply by 6, so 250 was just used to help give roundabout math. So yeah, no, we're very much aware there's no home, virtually zero homes you can buy for 250. So if your home's worth 750, you multiply those dollars by 3.
Yeah, I just don't think it shows that increase in taxes as much as it should for the amount of people here that have properties. Yeah, that's a lot more than the average, or a lot more than 250,000.
Right.
Perhaps you could explain it a little bit more clearly for him, because I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so it's, again, that's for 250 a home value. Now, yes, you have to factor in if your home increased in value, then if it was 250 last year, and sorry, it was 750 last year, you would triple last year's number. And if it's worth 300, you more than triple that number this year. So you're right, you have to factor in the increase in your assessment.
Let's go back to the, maybe 1 or 2 slides there. There, that one right there.
Yeah.
You see how much, now why is it that that group of people is paying 40% for the recreation center of their taxes? And their home value, if you have 250,000, so let's say your home is worth $750,000. You're gonna be paying 3 times that amount. That's $1,950, if my math is quick math is right. And 40% of that is going to the rec center. For what reason is that offloaded onto this portion of people?
So it's proportional.
To the other taxes, to the other areas.
Right, but if you were to take, everybody's paying, who's paying the recreational service, is paying the same rate for $1,000 of home value.
That's not what that chart shows.
Right, so this, yeah.
Okay, let's see another one then. Recreation facility, how much are they paying?
Right, so on a per $1,000 basis, they'll be paying the same amount. So if
you look at it says 304.57
Yes.
there. You go to the next slide, the exact same number.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for pointing that out. Yes.
So it's identical.
It's
The
the same
amount that's
dollars.
paid is identical. It's just how it's divided in the pie chart that is what the difference is. So it's just that the rest of your services cost less, so it becomes a larger percentage of what your tax bill is.
There's no garbage pickup, there's no water, there's.
Right, so you have less services you're paying for, so overwhelmingly you're paying more for that. So it's not that nobody's paying more than anybody else. As far as the 304.57 is the same across the board, regardless of where it is, as far as I can tell.
Well, we,
Yeah.
well, we are actually paying more for $250,000. Paying, quite a bit more than the last one. And where do we have this access to these slides?
So these slides will be on the RDCK website. If you click on the calendar, today's date, this meeting, and bring up this meeting, this presentation will be available tomorrow afternoon to have a closer look at the presentation. So I think we covered off no fire protection area itself, so we'll move on to area B. So again, thank you very much for pointing it out. Rec facility 304, but now it's a smaller proportion, about 35–40%. And you've got fire protection making up and refuse disposal making up the rest of about 75%. But as you can see, your total dollar tax bill for 250 is also higher. So with Erickson Fire Protection, similar to the last one, very similar looking chart. Sorry, Erickson.
If I could just say something. So my husband and I bought a place in Wendell in 2017, and it was at $245,000. The value of it. And now it's at $475,000 in 7 years. So my question is, how does this work? Year after year after year, it increases. So there was a house built on our road. We have been jacked. We can't afford it. And we're just trying to get by. So how does this work? Every year, goes up. If someone else may build something, work their ass off to get a house built, add it on. I don't know. It's just, it's mental. There's no end in sight.
Yeah, and that's again largely driven by BC assessment. Sorry, that's BC assessment calculates those values based on actual home sales. If in any given year you do have the opportunity to appeal your assessment.
We've done that, but that's hell.
Yeah, that was hell. I did that too, it was hell.
Creston is crap, like big time. All of it.
So what
And
happens when we can't?
You know, I'm telling you, I don't know if you can answer this question anywhere tonight, anywhere. You haven't said a word, and you're my director for my area. I would love to hear something from you.
What I don't understand is, you buy a new vehicle, 5 years, not as much worth than it was new. Why my houses keep going up and up when it's declining, maybe value? Why it's not depreciated, get lower and lower and lower, because it gets older, the roof is worn out, things are worn out, and everything. Yeah, another one to say, you can hear I have an accident, try to deal with the government, say perfect English and use like the words. I don't even know what they mean. Why they don't make it very simple to people or whoever wants to fight it, fair chance to fight it.
Yes.
What happens if we can't pay our property tax? We're done paying, we can't give it no more.
So that's the collection of property taxes is the responsibility of the province. So they have a process that they go through.
Explain that process.
Stealing for you.
I'm not, because I'm not part of that.
There's gonna be more and more of us that can't afford to pay. We're done, we can't pay.
You take your house and they put it on.
Well, when you pack your
Let's
bags,
see them come down and take my house.
you pack your bags prepared to, for what? Now, did I hear something about homeless stuff being done? Bottom of the Main Street for homeless, or something's going on there, I would love to hear about that.
When you file an appeal with assessments, we filed one. That's a very good help for ladies in this room tonight. You know what they told us? Too much information was submitted. They didn't even follow their own guidelines on getting back to us. So considering that the RDCK is taking such a large proportion of our taxes, and you claim to be so concerned about our welfare, which again, I don't believe you, of course, I think that you should be going up to the plate for us, to the province, and going, hey, we got a problem here, we got a lot of pissed off people here. People they can't pay anymore, we got food banks lined up. You know,
Don't, I mean, I know you don't personally care, because you're a CFO, and I'm sure you're getting very well paid. And I'm sure you're getting a lovely wage increase every year. We care for each other. You don't care for us, this is plain. And if I sound aggressive, it's because I'm frustrated. I'm gonna, I don't even know why I'm living here anymore. I'm seriously considering selling all my rental properties, selling my house, selling my acreage, and moving back to Alberta. Because it's just ridiculous. I just cannot believe the changes I've seen here in the last, how long have I been here? Since 2007. I mean, it's just absolutely absurd. And we come here in good faith, we ask you questions, we get a lot of word salads, we get a lot of answers that don't really say a lot. It's kind of distressing to see this. And I'll be honest, I'm probably in better shape than a lot of people here. That's not the point. Okay, there's a lot of people here who chose to live here to choose their style of life. And these taxation increases are just coming all the time. And if we see wage increases, and I listened to Mr. DeBoon talk about, due process, and these things are decided, and blah, blah, blah. It's just like, we don't care. We just don't care. I can rationalize anything. I can have an argument with you about anything, and I can justify my position, and I can make as much sense as you can. That doesn't mean that you're right. That doesn't mean that you care. Just because you give a reason for something, it doesn't mean it's correct, or it's moral, or it's just. That's what we feel is going on here. We're not being treated morally, we're not being treated justly, we're not being treated fairly. We're being ignored, we're being marginalized. And in some cases, and I can prove it, we're being lied to.
Good evening. I think we're all a little frustrated. You can feel that. And I think what we'd like from Kelly and Arnold, we want you guys to be a voice for us because you need to be. And, in all these things, it is kind of scary. I think of my children, they're young. I think of them when they're going to be 20 and 30. How are they going to do it? I don't really see a huge end in sight. And housing, I'm just going to talk about housing for a bit. It's a huge part of every one of our lives, housing. And I'm involved in the housing. And, it was mentioned here a few times, the wages. Yeah, can't find a building inspector, gotta raise wages to get one. And I can believe that. In the setting that we have, the chaos that we have in our building inspector department, you couldn't pay me enough to do that job. You would have to have a massive wage. That's what we're running into. If that was a well-run, organized department with a good morale and you work for our people, it would be an awesome job. Awesome job. And I know personally, 2 or 3 contractors that would love that job. But right now, the way it's organized and the structure and the frustration that we have trying to get a building permit, trying to build houses, it's no small thing. And I think the frustration for most of us is that, what about the future? It's not getting better. And I think we need to, that's where we look to you guys, and I appreciate you sitting up there. It's a job I wouldn't want. But we need a voice to go into the future and to really help us here, because it's not getting easier. So, thanks.
Julie wants to know.
Sorry, Julie wants to know what the directors, what their understanding of why inflation is so high.
We have a remote question to the directors, not directly related to the budget, but asking what the director's understanding of why inflation is so high and why it's continually increasing. So does anybody want to address why inflation is generally increasing?
I'm Director Vandenberg, and normally when it comes to microphone, I usually don't have a whole lot of problems with the microphone. Tonight has been very good for me to listen to what everybody is saying, and I've been hearing the message loud and clear. To answer this particular question before I carry on, it's federal and provincial policy. It's dumb, it's crazy. And until we have changes in leadership in those areas, we're gonna experience it, we're gonna continue to experience it. You can't grow in this type of an economy. It costs too much to do anything. You gotta get the money back into the hands of the people. That's what I firmly believe. So, when I sit at the table with 19 other directors, I'm one of the few, and I will say, that pushes back, that asks the hard questions, that what can we do different? And I said to Craig not too long ago, what would a zero increase level of services look like from the rec center? And they came back with that answer. Those are the type of questions that I asked. Building, we're talking about building inspectors. So my push is customer service. The first thing I noticed here is it's terrible. Terrible. It's not the taxpayers that count. It's what our policies within RDCK that count. That's wrong. It's customer service. How can we help our people get things built faster? And I've been pushing that, and I'm relentless. We talked about the GIS system. It's a mapping system. Why do we need such a big mapping system? The government has one, this group has one, that group has one. Why are we spending money on this? Okay, that's a big one. And I have climate action. Boy, I've heard a lot of climate action. And some gentleman said here, we're still coming out of an ice age. Hello? We are. It is warming up. It is. Food and agriculture. That's economic development, and food and agriculture are those things that I'm passionate about. And so what do I do about food and agriculture? I now am a chair that sits on the invasive species task force to find out why we're not killing the weeds. What can we do to actually, it's good to talk about it, but the farmers need help in eradicating some of those species. What are we gonna do about it? Now I'm sitting as a chair on that board. So these are things that I am doing. Solar panels. So I'm a certified installer of solar panels. I'm not gonna get any in my place. We don't have enough sun. The payback, yeah, you can say all the optimum things you want, but I don't think I'm gonna get paid back is why I'm not getting the solar panels. So these are things that I'm working in the background, pushing on all the time, sitting at that table. And I'm listening to everything that people are willing to tell me. And those people that have talked to me, they know that. So Carl asked, do you want somebody to stick up for you and represent you? Yeah, I'm your guy. Just have to just let me know what's on your mind. I will not blindly go into something without doing my own research. That I won't do. And I may disagree with you, Carl, on a couple of things, but I'll tell you. Type of thing. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you for encouraging me to speak. I wasn't quite sure. I was more interested in listening to what you guys are saying.
Well, I have a question, the mayor, as Mayor Creston, and to the RDCK. I've been going around to the various communities. Do their deputations to the mayor and councils and advising them and informing them of the situation that they're working on. And I don't know, you said that we haven't adopted the climate action plan. Now, are you speaking for the RDCK with the land use bylaw and Creston? Pardon? Well, what I have found, and I'm just going to give you this as information, is that almost everyone says, oh, we're not looking at the 15-minute city, we're not looking at the C40 city. But if you look in the community, at their official community plan, in every one, it's hidden in there. Several of them are called infills. Others are called, Creston's is called the pocket community. It's in your community plan. There's even on page 35 or 36, there's the outline of the map of Creston, and it's got a 5-minute circle, a 10-minute circle, and a 15-minute circle. That can only relate to one thing. And because you have the pocket community, which is the infill, which is the preparation for the high density C40 cities, 15-minute smart cities, just like Nelson has passed their bylaw to allow up to 3 stories built on one city lot, that's including your own home. So someone can come in and say to a homeowner, I want to buy that part of your lot and I want to build this. You have no say as a neighbor, so you might find yourself in the center of 2 high-rises and a single family dwelling. They're trying to get rid of every single family dwelling. And that's in the community plans of every deputation we've made in the Kootenays. So that isn't just a coincidence, that's a plan. Some of these plans were dated 2017. People that are sitting on council weren't even there when this was put in. But for some reason, they are backing them, and I don't understand them, other than it is an Agenda 21 plan.
Exactly.
And it's to take over all of our private ownership of any land we own, regardless of what it is. Now, I sent the town of Creston to you, Mr. Mayor. A 354-page submission and a 200 and some page submission, along with a deputation, but it was as a submission. And I asked pertinent questions in there, and you refused to answer them. And I don't understand why. So I'm asking, we're talking about transparency. Is the RDCK, if that was presented to them, would they give everyone the same answer? We're not going to answer your questions. That's not working for the residents, and the residents have a right. They're the taxpayers. They have a right to those answers. Thank you.
I'll give you a simple answer. Creston is never going to become a 15-minute city under that definition. We are a town where we can get around our whole town in 15 minutes. We didn't design it that way because of the size of our town. We have no intention of, under the definition of what you're concerned about as a 15-minute city, we have no intention of doing that. Our land use here is because we're surrounded by agricultural land, and we cannot easily expand our city boundaries because we have agricultural land. So we have to build within the boundaries of our town. And we're doing that to improve our number of houses, to improve affordability. All the things that we're doing are to increase our housing stock because we need to within the confines of our town. And I'll leave it at that because this is a budget meeting. This is not a good meeting about 15-minute cities. Yeah, so, but that's my answer. We are not doing that. So I'm emphatic about that, and I'll stick with that because we are not doing what is defined as a 15-minute city under all this. We are not doing that. No. The difference is making a community walkable so that amenities are easily accessible. But again, this is a budget meeting, and I'm going to leave it at that. You're welcome to come to our town hall and I'll have discussion. You're welcome to do that.
Yes. I'm glad I came tonight. It's the first time I realized that the RDCK is a cog in the political wheel of Canada. And you're bound to do what the province wants, and the province is bound to do what Canada wants. And you're just a cog in the wheel. You really don't have a right to do anything unless the government above you tells you what you can do. And that's really frustrating to me because I thought we had some say. I just want to say something that I learned from a house inspector from an RDCK. He's on his office about Cranbrook, and I talked to him, I talked to him, and he actually had common sense to say. And I said, you need to get a job in the RDCK. He said, we at RDCK would never go to RDCK. He said, it's way too political. I said, you don't get to use your common sense. I was frustrated during COVID because there was all these arguments going on. Who wants to get vaccinated? Who doesn't? One guy said, I just say, when the discussion started, I just said, I got a bad case of CS. And the guy would always say, well, I'm sure hope you get over that. He says, I have no intention of it. CS meant common sense.
Can I just add one? I didn't get a chance to respond to Kelly. You say that you're the man to talk to here. And I'm sure you remember me from Wendell, we were on the water board. And when I asked the whole board, I asked you in front of the board, what you were bringing in a wage per year. And you didn't answer, and everybody else said, we don't know. But it was right in front of us, the paperwork. So I do have a little bit of a trust issue with you, and that comes by honestly. So that's for me. And I'm actually not the only one in Wendell that has that issue with you. So I hope you can prove me wrong. That would be great.
Okay, we'll move. We just got a couple slides left. There's Jack. Area meeting with the Arrow Creek fire protection. Same cost for the rec facility and very similar to the other graphs. And about 75% fire, refuse, and recreation. Area being no fire protection, so recreation becomes half of your bill. Area C in the window fire protection. Again, refuse, recreation, and fire. Area C, Erickson, similar to the last chart. So again, all of these will be available tomorrow online. And West Creston, fire protection, recreation, and refuse. Sorry, we have a question back there.
Yeah, just the CPC in their 2030 agenda, they claim that all publicly owned government buildings will have to be retrofitted to the highest standard. Is that reflected in the budget? Is that part of the reserves? Where is that coming in and how much is that going to cost?
Sorry, can you repeat the first part of your question?
CBC in their 2030 agenda claims that all publicly owned government buildings will have to be retrofitted. Just like all of our homes are going to have to be retrofitted under the climate action plan. So we won't be able to sell them without them being retrofitted, etc. But that's also for government buildings. So who's paying that bill? How much is that going to be? Is it in your reserve? Are you looking?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that that plan for 2030, and I'm also not familiar with the climate action plan. Again, it hasn't been finalized, and I'm not aware that will be in the climate action plan. And so that's it for the presentation. Again, that'll be available tomorrow. So is there any remaining questions? So this will be on the website.
Yeah, I got a question.
Sure.
First of all, looks like for recreation, it's pretty much 50% of taxes. Now, if you use the recreation center, say a family of 4, you're going to spend another $2,500. For myself, I think that's just ridiculous for a family to be spending 60% of the taxes and to access it. It's just ridiculous. I can't understand how we can pay that much of your taxes for just recreation. Like, it's crazy. And if you don't, yeah, it's even worse, yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask was, you say you have about 400 employees in this area?
Yeah.
How many are front workers over management? Can you give me the ratio, percentage?
Well, again, there's different layers of.
Oh, you should know them. I'd like to know what they are. Give me the layers. Up front, middle management, and top management. What's this? Because if you're up top heavy, that would be, because that's a big part of your budget here.
Yeah.
And you're saying wages is a major part of your, if you're top heavy, maybe that's part of the problem.
Yeah, so there's about 5 senior managers who have a range of 2 to 4 managers reporting to them, and then going down from there. So I don't have all the numbers for each level, but there's a fairly large. Most of those.
You should be able to present that to us.
Yeah. Yeah, I can put that number together. I apologize, I don't have the top of that headcount on the top of my head. Okay, next question.
Yes, I just have a couple of quick questions. The carbon tax, is there any rebate or transfer funds coming from the federal government to the RDCK?
Not that I'm aware of directly.
So there's zero.
As far as
Is that not included in your revenue stream?
No.
The other question I had, draft climate action plans. We're calling for a lot of electric vehicles. And I'm concerned about the batteries in electric vehicles. Not so much during operations, which can be very dangerous, but on disposal. Those are going to be considered hazardous waste. And if you have one vehicle per every occupied residence, it's about 30,000 UVs. And 30,000 batteries need to be disposed of. In your budget, do you have a hazardous waste facility to accommodate those batteries?
So the climate action plan hasn't been released or brought in front of the board yet. And so anything that because it hasn't been really brought in front of the board or approved by the board, nothing in the climate action plan or the coming climate action plan is incorporated in the budget.
So that means there will be no climate actions taken in 2024.
There will be planning to complete the climate action plan. So I'm not.
No costs associated with it.
At this point, none that I'm aware of. So there are projects that relate to the climate and sustainability, but any specific directives how to or any part of the climate action plan is not incorporated in the budget.
Thank you.
Is there the action plan going to be discussed with the public before approve it, or just going to approve and what and let it die?
Yeah, so not sure how exactly it's going to happen, but it's going to go to the board, and I'm not, it'll be up to the individual directors to reach out to the public and gather public input on that. And I believe we also have an online engagement site relating to the climate action plan, so that should be available as well.
So yeah, once the hypothetical climate action plan is in place, and I know it's not approved, I imagine since it's a climate action plan, it will action the climate. So we're going to action the climate, correct? So you will have metrics to measure how well we're actioning the climate in the region. It would have to be metrics, right?
So I haven't seen the draft.
I know, so you have to be metrics. To action the climate, if positively or negatively, it would have to be a metric to see how we're doing that.
Right, so I'm not the expert on that, or I'm not the person to speak to at the regional district, regarding the specifics, those specifics of the climate action plan. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that question today. Okay, good question here.
I want to kind of continue on with Carl's, what he was mentioning. The building inspection is up to 20%. So you opt, and I know that the mayor, he kind of chuckled, but probably have a tough job. I can tell you contractors are bailing. I deal with almost every contractor in the east and west areas. But this area, they are bailing. They are getting out. Now, I've run into all kinds of contractors, why they get. And some of them have seen 9 contractors, 9 building inspectors, and their job isn't finished yet. I've known people that the regional district have said, hey, you want a job? They thought about it for the weekend. They said, you know what, I wouldn't take your job. When was the last time you seen somebody 19 or 20 like me that said, I'm gonna build a house? You know what? They can't build houses. It's a regional different fall. You will rather have people living in tents than have them trying to build a house or somehow get a house built. Now, to me, if you're not building houses, you're destroying yourself because you're losing your tax base. You need houses built. And every contract I know is basically shut down. So you can take this to wherever you want to take it to. Yeah, we're tough on building inspectors. But they got it. People say when Daryl Plotnikoff left, that was the end of the building inspectors.
Just going off what that gentleman was saying, in regards to like the food bank, you had 12 to 1,800 people using the food bank. We're going to increase taxes by 10, 11%. We're going to get all these people defaulting on their mortgages. And now they went from 14,000 people paying taxes, 12,000 people paying taxes. I guess we'll increase our taxes a little bit more because there's less taxpayers who are to pay for everything because everyone defaulted into or had to go to the food bank, right? Got to plan more ahead, I would say.
What exactly are your reserves for, and where are you putting them balance?
Our reserves sit in our investments. We have about $44 million of reserves. And those reserves are spread across all of the services. So each service has a reserve that's determined either at the committee or commission level. Depending on the service, it's either for stabilization purposes to offset future decreases in revenues, for instance, in building permits. There's a reserve for this service for future potential work in maintaining the facility, whether it's roof repairs, replacing parts of the ice rink or the pool. So they're spread across all the services. Directors and commissions and committees make the decisions about the level of reserves required in each service.
So are some of those put in 5% savings?
Yes, most.
With that, with the 5% that you're earning, are you able to take that out and use that for some of what's going on?
So that 5%, as I mentioned earlier, is used to top up those reserves. So those reserves, at least some effect, stay even with inflation, because inflation again has to replace replacement costs. Contractor costs are increasing greater than inflation. So our general policy is that investment earnings on reserves go to top up reserves. Yeah, question way back there. Oh, can you speak into the mic, please?
Once again, not to attack your guys' stand, but it seems like, you know, as inflation increases, you guys are able to move with it, everyone else just can't.
And if I can just add to that, I think like Jeff's been saying, pull out his wallet, and he said, it's coming out of your wallet, it's coming out of my wallet. I think our wallets are quite as deep as possibly your guys's. And also, even the stars that I'm saying, our mayor saying that this rec center is attracting doctors to the area, when more than half of this crowd has no doctors, is pitiful and it's hurtful. It's hurtful. Do you know how many times I've applied for a doctor? My husband and I, like, this is pathetic. Not to mention the problems that we've had with the medical situation here in BC. It's a mess. It's a mess. We're not short on nurses. We've got lots of nurses that want to go back to work. Yeah. But they won't hire them back. You won't say anything to the province is getting hired back. This is what breaks our heart. You people will not stand up for us. It's the only way we're going to see change is the bottom up. Yeah. You, and Gary, and all the people like you, the Stuart Orange, the Joe Speakers of the world, don't stand up for us. You're gonna end up with pretty much nothing. It might be in 50 years, long after we're all dead, but this is the way it's going, and you fail to see it. You just fail to see this trend that's developing. And it's not entirely your fault, but it is your fault that you're not doing it. We don't want to fight. We don't want to argue. We don't even want to be here because for years we trusted our governments, our local governments. We did. The tax bill came in, you wrote a check, you nailed us, went up a little bit every year, here and there. Now it's just leaps and bounds, leaps and bounds. And it's just like, where does it stop? We don't see an end. There is no end in sight. And we're not seeing any of you stepping forward, being brave, saying the right thing. You know, I've written terrible letters about certain subjects. Probably knows the White House, right? Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he gets 10 letters a day. I don't know. And it's just like, I don't have a position on it. I go to a letter about nurses. I go, this affects us all. And his actual answer was, Lieutenant Creston, we don't have a position on it. How the hell can you not have a position on people not having health care in a G7 country? How is that even conceivable? How do you not have a position on it? I don't understand it. We've got mayors in other parts of BC speaking up about this, but our mayor, our town council, our CAO, Michael Moore, who by the way seems to direct the show, and I have a very interesting letter to prove that. It's an email that was leaked. No one's saying anything. Why? What is it? What motivates you people to get out of bed every morning? This is really the question. Some of us are asking ourselves, we've been asking ourselves this question for years, some of us. I'm lost. I really am. I totally lost the horrific of any understanding at all. It's been that way for quite some time. Here.
Talking about the reserves that you had, and it's that, well, talking about the reserves that you got, and it's a huge amount. I looks at it, and getting 5% interest on it, and you're talking about other things that are going to come due, and interest rates are going to go up. Wouldn't it be better to somehow find a way to get some of them reserves to pay down the deficit, so we're not paying extra money out on interest? And if we're not paying that money out on interest, it should reflect down the road on lowering taxes.
Yeah. So we're actually earning more on our investments right now than we're paying out in interest.
It's at 5%.
Right. So we're
so what are you paying on interest?
We're paying on interest about 4.5, 4.8. So we have, so we earn more on our.
Yeah, but how's the interest calculated is the other thing, like, I know a lot of mortgage interest, they end up paying, you know, double the amount of the value of the property just on interest, just because of the way it's calculated out. So, how's the interest calculated out on what you receive in interest as to what you're paying out in interest?
The same way, the rates are calculated the same way, so we earn more on our investments than we pay interest on our current loans.
That's short term possibly.
That, so that's, both on our short term and our longer term, both on our short and long term investments.
But those, the loan rates will last much shorter.
They have gone up, and our long-term borrowing rate is currently below, if we enter a new loan agreement, it's below our current interest we receive on our accounts. Okay.
When you talk about the investments and stuff, Mike, I'm just curious because anytime I've sort of done financial advising, I've always found that my money be represented on ethical grounds. And so when we take money from the people of the town, do we have ethical guidelines as to where those investments are placed? Are we supporting the agenda that we're all concerned about with our investments? Is there even an awareness of these things when you're talking about where you choose to invest?
Yeah, no, great question. So our investment portfolio, again, is limited by provincial legislation. So we can't invest into mutual funds or stocks or anything, that narrow if there's the principles at risk. So we're basically limited to things like GICs and savings accounts at financial institutions who offers a strong return. So our operating funds are kept in financial institutions where we have access to them. So we generally can't allocate funds towards items like mutual funds or individual companies.
So, I would like to wrap this up in saying that, honestly, we appreciate everything that we've heard here tonight, and we are listening. We have had, this has been the largest budget meeting that we have ever seen. And in previous years, no one had a budget meeting, so this is extraordinary, and it's very, very helpful. And I hope that in presenting it, I know there's a lot you disagree with, and there's a lot you're unhappy with, but our intent was to inform you of what we do and what we are budgeted for. And the budgets are all based on established service levels. It didn't come about in a short time. These established service levels have come about over years. The service levels that we have are here because most people want them that way and accept them that way. What's happening now is through inflation, it's getting more expensive to give you the same service you've always had. And that makes our
does not make it right.
And so again, we appreciate your comments and your concerns and your interest, because this is something that's new to you and new to us to have this many people at this type of meeting. And honestly, we do appreciate that.
I think it says so much here. That's what it says. But I have a question. So about the taxes, for someone that says, let's say they can't afford their taxes, is there such a thing as a 5-year break from paying your taxes?
There are actually, if you look at your tax notices, and I think it's the same in the regional district, there are deferral plans for taxes as well. And so when people say, should I consider a deferral, you gotta realize that the value of your property rises more than the debt that you would have by deferring taxes.
So I do have a point to that question.
Yeah.
So I'm not asking for myself, because we've scratched it all together somehow. Sell a lot of garlic to try and make ends meet. But what I've heard is that the city of Creston has given a break to the Ramada Hotel for 5 years and then extended that break another 5 years. So that's 10 years tax-free at the Ramada, is that correct?
The town of Creston has had a building plan to encourage people to invest in our community, and they've received tax breaks for that. That doesn't mean they don't pay any taxes, and at this point, they pay full taxes now. So, we also.
They did get a break.
They got a break, and when the business is established in our town, then years ago, council decided that they would provide breaks to provide the incentive for people to set up businesses. And
But now people are taking their businesses out of town. Do you not understand that? And tell me, so this is a hotel that's making good money, the restaurant, bar, you name it.
And they're paying it. They're paying it.
They are now, you said, you clarified they are now. What about the folks that are on a fixed income and their pension is not going up? It's not moving. But the grocery sure are moving, they're going up. Good Lord.
Fuel.
Fuel, it's all of it. It's the carbon tax, yeah.
Hi there. I live in Harrison, was born in Creston, grew up here.
Arnie, thank you so much. I believe the meeting's ending now online. So thank you.
Bye.
That's
I grew up here in Creston, stayed for many years, and still retired in 10 and moved back here. I just wanted to mention that my water bill when I moved back here was $630 for the year. Now I pay $3,090 a year. And I don't, I'm not going to talk about the taxes. And secondly, there's a number of nurses here. And when my mother retired way back, she was a nurse for 44 years. And she was in 3 hospitals here in Creston. The old one where the parking lot is, all the way up. One of the first nurses in Yellowknife way back in the 30s. Mom, her pension was $447 a month when she came to live with me in Chilliwack in 2009. $447. Thank you.
Excellent point, how can you pay for your house and taxes for that? I just want to ask you, Mayor DeBoon and Kelly Vandenberg, on behalf of the people here and the people of Creston and Area A, B, and C, who all showed up here tonight, and thank you very much for all who showed up.
Thank you.
And I want to recognize the young people who actually are here and taking an interest in the community. And what I want to ask is to please become a voice for the people, the residents of the town and the areas that you represent. And we expect you to go and stand up for us to the province, and we expect the province to stand up to the federal government. I hope that will, I look to see that day. I'm very doubtful, yes. So that is my request for you, and I also will request that we are all intelligent people here, and that you allow us to come and speak with you in these kind of settings. Thank you. Thanks for beating me with the words, guys. Because we have questions and we're intelligent and we're not stupid and we're not old residents or whatever you want to call us. We are people just like you. We live here just like you. We are concerned. I hope you're as concerned as us. I had one more thing to say, but it flew out of my mind. And thank you for coming and listening to our questions without shutting us down. I appreciate that.
Again, I appreciate all your participation, and I just want to make one comment that often things get posted on social media and sometimes they're not accurate. And I ask myself, and I ask people, why didn't you just phone me or phone town hall or phone someone in the regional district and ask that question before you post an opinion on social media? Because wrong opinions and misinformation are extremely damaging to our community. So I have to say that because we get exposed to that so often where there's false information posted because no one has just taken a moment to call me as a mayor, call a regional director, call our town hall, and ask the question before we post an opinion. It's a very simple request.
Excuse me, are you referring to the Ramada?
Pardon?
Are you referring to the Ramada?
No, I'm not. I'm referring to, sometimes people will post something on social media without asking if that's actually true. And here's an example. Last night's town council meeting, we were talking about perhaps establishing a homeless shelter downtown. The rumor on social media was we were going to shut down the bathroom on Main Street. That was a social media rumor. It wasn't true. If someone would have just called us and said, is that part of your plan? We would have said no. But instead, you post it on social media, get everybody upset that town bathrooms are going to be closed, and it's simply not true. So it's a simple request. If you have an opinion about something and you're not sure, contact the people that can answer the question before you put it on social media, because it does harm.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I guess just,
Sorry.
can I just be corrected if I'm wrong on this by RDCK people?
Okay.
Sorry, if I can be corrected by RDCK people, because I could be totally up for lunch on this. If you became a corporation in 1965, does that mean that you're operating under the laws of corporation where business is contracted? And if so, you must either have a contract with me to spend this money or receive my tax approval by silence to achieve this. Is that correct? Because for the public record, I don't agree with this budget. For the public record, I don't agree and don't contract with you for the climate action plan. I don't contract with you for the sustainability. I don't contract with the province for the emergency response they're going to have. I don't contract with RDCK systematic take down our farmers, their livelihoods, and our. It goes on, but I don't contract with you.
The array, I was.
Okay, thank you everyone very much for attending 41 and all your questions. Have something Friday. It took me a while to recognize you. So, can you?
Yeah.